Beneath dense forests and along forgotten riverbeds, terraces of stone and submerged platforms emerge, remnants of civilizations that existed long before written history. Massive blocks, precise layouts, and wooden frameworks lie partially buried or underwater, their purpose obscured by millennia of soil and sediment. Across volcanic highlands and coastal depths, archaeologists carefully uncover these pre-flood structures, revealing patterns of ritual, settlement, and construction that challenge conventional timelines. As you follow these discoveries, the meticulous work of excavation and analysis comes alive, showing the ingenuity and organization of societies long vanished. Each layer of stone and earth holds fragments of stories that refuse to be fully understood, and in these quiet, enigmatic landscapes, traces of human ambition endure, whispering of civilizations whose knowledge and skill continue to provoke awe and question the very origins of monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe's buried stone enclosures. Stone rises quietly from a limestone ridge in southeastern Anatolia, its surface weathered but deliberate, as if shaped for a purpose that resisted time rather than embraced it. Long before written language, metal tools, or settled agriculture, human hands arranged pillars into precise circles atop this hill. The place is now called Göbekli Tepe, and archaeologists classify it as a pre-pottery Neolithic site. Yet those labels fail to explain why such an ambitious stone complex existed at all. What gives the site its unsettling power is not only its age, dated to roughly 9,600 BCE, but the fact that it was constructed before the environmental shifts that would later flood valleys and transform the region's rivers. When systematic excavation began in the mid-1990s, led by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, the mound was assumed to be another ruined medieval outpost. Instead, shallow trenches revealed enormous T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in circular enclosures, some weighing up to 16 tons. These structures were not natural formations or random accumulations of stone. They were deliberately shaped, carefully positioned, and embedded into carved sockets in the bedrock. Radiocarbon dating placed their construction at the very beginning of the Holocene, a time when melting ice sheets were reshaping climates, raising water levels, and altering landscapes across the Near East. Each enclosure follows a similar pattern, with massive central pillars surrounded by smaller ones facing inward, forming stone rings that suggest ritual spaces rather than dwellings. The pillars themselves are unlike anything else from the period, their T-shapes interpreted as highly stylized human forms, complete with carved arms and hands along the sides. No hearths, ovens, or domestic debris appear within the enclosures, reinforcing the conclusion that Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement. Instead, it seems to have served as a place set apart built by hunter-gatherer groups at a time when survival alone should have consumed every available resource, and the carved imagery deepens the mystery rather than clarifying it. Foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, vultures, and lions emerge from the stone in low relief, rendered with remarkable precision and confidence. These animals do not appear randomly distributed but recur across multiple pillars, suggesting shared symbolic meaning across generations. Some pillars display abstract symbols whose significance remains unknown, while others show predatory animals clustered together in unsettling proximity. The carvings are not decorative flourishes. They appear intentional, placed at eye level, as if meant to confront those who entered the enclosures. One of the most puzzling aspects of Göbekli Tepe is what is missing. Archaeologists found no evidence of agriculture during the earliest phases of construction, despite the immense labour required to quarry, transport, and erect the pillars. The nearest limestone quarries lie hundreds of metres away, where extraction marks remain visible in the bedrock. Without domesticated animals or wheeled transport, builders would have relied entirely on human coordination. This challenges long-held assumptions that complex monumental architecture arose only after stable food production, suggesting instead that communal belief systems may have driven people to organise on a massive scale. Equally striking is the site's relationship with water and climate. Göbekli Tepe was built during a period of environmental instability, when post-glacial warming altered rainfall patterns and reshaped river systems in Upper Mesopotamia. Floodplains expanded, seasonal torrents became more unpredictable, and low-lying areas were periodically inundated. While the hill itself remained above floodwaters, its builders lived in a world increasingly shaped by water's advance. The effort to raise enduring stone structures may reflect a response to landscapes that could no longer be relied upon to remain unchanged. Then there is the most baffling act of all, burial. After centuries of use, the enclosures were deliberately filled with debris, stone fragments, animal bones and soil, sealing the pillars from view. This was not abandonment through neglect or destruction by catastrophe. The infill was systematic and intentional, preserving the structures beneath a protective layer. The reasons remain unknown. Some researchers suggest ritual closure, others propose environmental pressure, yet none can explain why such monumental works were hidden rather than repurposed or dismantled. What archaeologists found within the fill layers altered how the burial of Göbekli Tepe was understood. The material used to seal the enclosures was not simple wind-blown sediment, but a dense mixture of limestone rubble, broken tools, flint flakes, and thousands of fragmented animal bones, many bearing cut marks consistent with large-scale processing. The fill was deposited rapidly rather than accumulating over time, indicating a coordinated effort rather than gradual abandonment. Soil analysis shows the infill lacked the stratification typical of natural collapse, reinforcing the conclusion that these spaces were deliberately entombed in a short span, preserving the pillars almost exactly as they had stood at the moment of closure. Excavations revealed multiple layers of construction, with earlier, larger enclosures overlain by smaller, later ones, indicating long-term continuity of use. Yet each phase eventually met the same fate, buried by those who built it. The absence of human burials at the site further complicates interpretation. Göbekli Tepe does not fit neatly into categories of temple, cemetery or village. It occupies a conceptual space that predates those distinctions, hinting at belief systems formed before society itself took recognizable shape. The surrounding region adds further context. Nearby sites such as Navali Kori show similar pillar forms, though on a smaller scale, suggesting Göbekli Tepe was part of a broader cultural tradition now largely erased. Many of those settlements lie beneath modern reservoirs or alluvial deposits, flooded by rivers that expanded as climates warmed. What survives on the hilltop may be only a fragment of a much larger ritual landscape, most of it now hidden under water or sediment, unreachable by excavation. Scientific analysis continues to refine the timeline. Radiocarbon dates place the earliest enclosures firmly before 9000 BCE, centuries before widespread farming in the region. Microscopic studies of tool marks confirm that stone tools were used, while residue analysis of animal bones points to large communal feasts rather than everyday consumption. These gatherings may have reinforced social bonds strong enough to mobilize labour on an unprecedented scale, even as environmental conditions grew increasingly unstable. Despite decades of study, only a small portion of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Geophysical surveys indicate many more enclosures remain buried beneath the mound, intentionally concealed just like those already uncovered. Each unexcavated structure represents another unanswered question, another chapter sealed beneath limestone and soil. Archaeologists must decide whether uncovering them risks destroying the very preservation that has kept the site intact for over 11,000 years. What makes Göbekli Tepe endure as a pre-flood enigma is not merely its antiquity, but the sense that it was built in anticipation of loss. The decision to carve stone rather than rely on fragile materials, the placement of the site above flood-prone plains, and the act of burying it intact suggest an awareness that landscapes, and perhaps entire ways of life, were about to change. The structures survived because they were hidden, waiting silently as waters rose and civilizations yet unborn reshaped the world around them. Beneath the hill's quiet surface, more stone circles remain sealed in darkness, as if deliberately left behind to outlast the floods and reveal themselves only when the future was ready to ask why they were built at all. 2. Dwarka's submerged city walls. The shoreline near modern Dwarka does not end where land gives way to water, because stone geometry continues beyond the surf, hidden by shifting tides and sediment rather than distance. Fishing boats move across a surface that appears ordinary, yet the sea here has a reputation for revealing and concealing in equal measure. Coastal erosion has long reshaped this stretch of Gujarat, but what unsettled researchers was not the loss of shoreline alone, it was the suggestion that an organised human presence once occupied areas now claimed by water. The pre-flood structure at the centre of this mystery is not a single monument, but but a network of stone walls forming part of a submerged city. Marine surveys off India's western coast began detecting unnatural right angles, where the seabed should have been irregular and formless. Sonar scans revealed linear features extending across the seafloor near Dwarka, patterns inconsistent with natural rock formations. When divers were dispatched to investigate, they reported encountering stone alignments, arranged in parallel and perpendicular orientations. These were not isolated blocks scattered by storms, but connected sections forming recognizable boundaries. Archaeologists from India's National Institute of Oceanography documented these findings, noting that the geometry suggested intentional construction rather than geological coincidence. Divers descending through clouded water encountered walls laid in deliberate alignment, their courses too straight and evenly spaced to be the work of currents. Some sections appeared to form enclosures, while others extended outward like streets or boundary markers. Stone anchors, pottery fragments, and structural remains were found nearby, reinforcing the interpretation that this was once a functioning coastal settlement. The walls were not crude or temporary. They showed consistency in spacing and construction that implied planning, coordination, and an understanding of the surrounding landscape before it was transformed by rising seas. Blocks of dressed stone resting on the seafloor reveal careful selection and placement, rather than the randomness expected of collapsed shoreline debris. Many stones were rectangular and laid horizontally, suggesting they were once part of stable foundations. The size and weight of these blocks would have required organised labour and deliberate transport. Archaeologists observed that the stones were arranged in courses, not piled, and that some walls followed gentle curves, adapting to terrain that is now obscured by water and marine growth. Assigning age to structures claimed by the sea has proven difficult, as water alters context and erases the stratigraphy archaeologists rely upon. Organic materials degrade quickly, and sediments shift over time, complicating efforts to establish precise timelines. However, artifacts recovered from the vicinity, including pottery styles and stone anchors, suggest significant antiquity. While estimates vary, researchers agree that parts of the submerged city predate major coastal flooding events associated with post-glacial sea level rise, placing its construction before the shoreline assumed its present form. Core samples taken from the seabed near the stone walls have provided additional context that surface observation alone could not offer. These samples reveal compacted sediment layers formed in shallow, nearshore conditions rather than deep marine environments, supporting the interpretation that the structures were originally built on dry land. Marine organisms encrusted on the stones show growth patterns consistent with long-term submersion rather than sudden collapse, indicating a slow transition from coastal settlement to an underwater site. Together, these findings strengthen the case that the city's disappearance resulted from progressive sea level rise rather than a single catastrophic event. Long before the Arabian Sea reached its modern boundary, lower coastlines exposed wide plains that were slowly surrendered as post-glacial waters advanced. Geological studies indicate that sea levels rose steadily after the last ice age, inundating coastal settlements across the world. In western India, this process was gradual but relentless. River systems shifted, deltas expanded, and habitable land was incrementally lost. Dwarka's location along this vulnerable margin placed it directly in the path of encroaching water, a factor that may explain why its structures now rest offshore rather than in ruins on land. Layer by layer, marine sediment settled against standing stone, transforming streets into channels and courtyards into silent basins. Unlike cities destroyed by sudden catastrophe, Dwarka appears to have been overtaken over time. Walls remained standing as water levels rose, allowing marine life to colonize their surfaces. This slow submergence preserved layout and orientation, even as daily life became impossible. The city was not erased in a moment of chaos, but quietly withdrew from use as the environment no longer supported habitation. Even as physical traces disappeared, accounts of a coastal city persisted in memory long after its foundations slipped from view. Ancient texts describe Dwarka as a prosperous settlement linked to the sea, though archaeology treats such references cautiously. Rather than using legend as proof, researchers note the unusual convergence between long-standing cultural memory and the presence of submerged architecture offshore. The persistence of these stories may reflect collective awareness of a city lost to water, preserved not in stone alone, but in narrative carried across generations. The surviving walls hint at a larger urban plan, one that likely extended beyond what divers can now reach or safely map. Straight alignments suggest streets, while enclosed spaces imply residential or civic zones. Some features appear oriented toward what would have been an ancient shoreline, indicating harbours or access points for maritime activity. If correct, this would place Dwarka among early coastal cities that relied on trade and seafaring, a role made increasingly precarious as water encroached upon the land they depended on. Underwater archaeology imposes strict limits on certainty, where visibility, currents, and conservation concerns restrict how much can be disturbed. Unlike land excavations, submerged sites cannot be fully exposed without risking irreversible damage. As a result, much of Dwarka's layout remains inferred rather than confirmed. Researchers must balance the desire for answers with the responsibility to preserve what remains intact. This tension ensures that some questions will remain unanswered, not for lack of interest, but out of necessity. Each new survey adds fragments to an incomplete outline, suggesting that significant portions of the submerged site remain undocumented. Advances in sonar imaging and remote sensing continue to reveal additional linear features beyond the initial survey zones. These findings hint that the known walls may represent only a fraction of a much larger settlement. With every pass of a research vessel, the city's outline grows more complex, and its history more difficult to dismiss as coincidence or exaggeration. Dwarka exists today in a suspended state, neither fully recovered nor entirely lost, balanced between measured stone and moving water. Its walls resist simple classification as myth or ruin, occupying a space where archaeology confirms human presence but cannot yet define its full story. The city's gradual disappearance mirrors the slow transformation of the coastline itself, reminding researchers that landscapes, like civilizations, are never as permanent as they appear. The city's walls remain where land once met certainty, waiting in shifting water for the moment when their true place in history can no longer be ignored. 3. Atlit Yam's stone architecture. The Mediterranean here appears calm, ordinary even, yet a few metres offshore, stone foundations lie submerged, hinting at a settlement preserved long before written history. From the surface, the water does not indicate human presence, yet divers descending into its cool depths find lines of stone walls that suggest purpose, planning, and permanence. The site, known as Atlit Yam, offers a rare glimpse of Neolithic life frozen in place, captured at a moment when rising sea levels were beginning to redraw the coastline. Even today, the settlement's existence challenges assumptions about the scale and sophistication of early coastal communities in the Levant. Marine archaeologists first encountered Atlit Yam while scanning the seafloor with sonar, and what emerged were outlines of walls as straight and deliberate as any terrestrial village. Initial surveys revealed structures laid out with discernible geometry, curving gently to follow the contours of the seabed. The clarity of these formations contrasted sharply with expectations of scattered or eroded debris, signalling that human hands had once organised this space. Sonar imaging, combined with targeted dives, allowed researchers to begin mapping the site with unprecedented detail, revealing domestic areas, public spaces, and stone-lined pathways still remarkably intact beneath layers of sand and silt. Stepping closer, divers traced the shapes of small rectangular dwellings, each stone carefully placed to mark floors and boundaries that had sheltered families thousands of years ago. The walls, though no more than a metre high in some places, retain a sense of deliberate proportion, suggesting that builders understood both spatial organisation and the structural demands of long-term habitation. Rooms were oriented with intention, often opening onto central courtyards or shared spaces that likely facilitated communal activity. Even absent roofs and doors, the pattern of the stones conveys a rhythm of daily life, of routines long disrupted by forces beyond human control. Among the most striking features were the circular stone-lined wells, their depth and symmetry suggesting an intimate knowledge of groundwater and the foresight to secure it for daily life. Each well was carefully cut into the substrate and reinforced with stone rings, allowing the inhabitants to reach fresh water, without relying on unpredictable rainfall or distant streams. The wells indicate that the settlement was planned not only for shelter but for sustainable living, demonstrating that early coastal communities understood both their environment and its limits. These features remain among the most compelling evidence that Atlit Yam was a deliberately constructed village rather than a transient campsite. Evidence of everyday activity came from hearths, grinding stones, and flint tools still lying in their original positions, revealing routines that were suddenly interrupted. Animal bones and charred plant remains point to dietary practices, while carefully shaped tools hint at tasks ranging from food preparation to maintenance of dwellings. These traces of domestic life are remarkable for their preservation, allowing modern archaeologists to reconstruct not only the physical structures, but the rhythms of habitation. The arrangement of artifacts within the rooms suggests that life continued in ordered patterns until water encroachment forced abandonment. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal and organic residue within the walls placed the settlement firmly in the Neolithic period, centuries before rising seas would reshape the Levantine coastline. Analysis of bone fragments and plant remains corroborates this timeframe, situating Atlit Yam in a broader context of early sedentary communities along the eastern Mediterranean. This period was one of experimentation, when humans were transitioning from foraging to farming, and settlements like Atlit Yam reveal the scale and sophistication possible even before widespread agricultural dominance. The dating underscores the fact that rising sea levels were already an active force in shaping human habitation. Geological studies indicate that the eastern Mediterranean experienced slow but persistent sea level rise, gradually advancing over fertile land that had once supported small, sedentary communities. Coastal plains that had once been dry became periodically inundated, rivers changed course, and low-lying areas transformed into marsh or shallow bays. For Atlit Yam, this meant that what was once a secure, productive settlement became increasingly vulnerable to encroaching water. The architecture itself reflects this vulnerability, with dwellings set on slightly raised stone platforms and wells carefully lined to maintain access to fresh water despite changing conditions. Findings point to a gradual abandonment, with hearths and tools left behind, yet no indications of violent or hurried departure. There is no evidence of fire, warfare, or sudden catastrophe. Instead, the settlement appears to have been vacated gradually, allowing the buildings to remain intact even as the surrounding terrain was slowly submerged. This measured abandonment gives the site a haunting stillness, as if life paused mid-motion, leaving the traces of everyday activities suspended in time for future generations to discover. The preservation of Atlit Yam is remarkable. Layers of fine silt and sand settled over the stone architecture, sealing it from erosion and allowing modern science to observe spaces exactly as they were used. Marine growth and sediment accumulation created a protective layer that prevented the collapse or dispersal of artifacts. Stone walls, hearths, and wells were encased almost immediately after abandonment, a geological cloak that has kept the village remarkably legible after more than 9 millennia. Without this natural preservation, insights into early Neolithic coastal life would be far more fragmentary. Skeletal remains discovered within the settlement provide glimpses into the health and diet of its people, offering clues about childhood, disease, and mortality long before written records. Analysis of bones has revealed traces of anemia, malnutrition, and other chronic conditions, reflecting the challenges of life at the edge of land and sea. The presence of burials within or adjacent to domestic spaces suggests that death was integrated into daily life. With little separation between living and deceased members of the community, these remains humanize the site, transforming stone and silt into a tangible record of individual lives. Despite these insights, much about Atlit Yam remains unknowable. The sounds, conversations, and decisions of those who lived here cannot be recovered from the stone and sediment. The rhythm of daily work, social interaction, and communal gatherings remains silent, and only the material traces hint at these lost experiences. Archaeologists can interpret tools, walls, and food remains, but the full texture of life, the choice to build, to maintain, and eventually to leave, is permanently absent. The settlement preserves structure and scale, but not story in its entirety. The settlement stands today as a testament to the fragile balance between human endeavour and environmental change, a village frozen at the moment when land gave way to sea. It is a site where planning, survival, and a nascent adaptation intersect, and where water ultimately dictated the limits of permanence. Atlit Yam continues to challenge assumptions, about early coastal settlements, showing that even the most careful planning cannot entirely defy the forces of nature. Time may have claimed the shore, but Atlit Yam endures in stone and silt, silently preserving the rhythm of lives that water forced to vanish. 4. Pavlopetri's sunken urban grid. A network of stone alignments lies preserved in shallow water, its geometric precision revealing the outlines of a city forgotten by time. Pavlopetri, off the coast of Laconia, Greece, stands out among submerged sites for its remarkable level of urban planning, revealing a settlement that existed well before large-scale historical records. The stones are not scattered randomly, they follow straight lines and precise intersections, hinting at a society capable of sophisticated architectural design. Unlike simpler coastal villages, the city's grid suggests forethought, organisation, and a level of civic coordination that challenges assumptions about early Bronze Age settlements. From these foundations, an entire city plan can still be traced. Researchers first recognised Pavlopetri as unusual when irregular seabed readings suddenly formed clear rectangular patterns under sonar imaging. Initial dives confirmed that these patterns were walls and streets rather than natural formations, forming an interconnected layout. Survey teams used a combination of sonar, photogrammetry and direct observation to map the site, producing detailed three-dimensional plans. Every dive revealed more intersections, right-angled blocks, and alignment regularities, emphasizing that the city was deliberately structured rather than haphazard. This discovery marked one of the earliest known examples of urban planning preserved beneath water. Careful analysis shows streets intersect at consistent angles, forming blocks that suggest deliberate design and an understanding of urban order. The layout consists of rectangular and square blocks, varying in size but connected by parallel and perpendicular thoroughfares. Evidence of alleyways, open spaces and pathways indicates that the settlement was not merely functional, but thoughtfully organised to accommodate human movement and activity. Archaeologists note that such precision implies a level of measurement and surveying uncommon for the period. The grid's continuity reveals that the city's planners anticipated growth and intended the arrangement to serve both domestic and public functions. Clusters of rectangular foundations hint at individual homes, workshops, and communal spaces, arranged with a level of coordination rare for the era. Some structures are larger and may have served as meeting halls or administrative centres, while smaller units suggest family dwellings. Hearths, stone bins, and storage pits were incorporated into the designs, indicating that everyday domestic life was considered alongside civic organisation. The careful placement of entrances, the alignment of rooms, and the spacing between buildings all suggest that inhabitants valued both utility and social interaction. Even underwater, the spatial logic of the settlement is unmistakable. Examination of stone walls reveals construction methods emphasizing stability and longevity, demonstrating knowledge of load-bearing principles in a coastal environment. Blocks were shaped and positioned to resist shifting sediment and rising tides, and mortarless masonry relied on careful balance and interlocking techniques. The builders clearly understood how to distribute weight across walls and foundations to prevent collapse. Evidence of reinforced corners, threshold stones, and stone pavements further supports the view that Pavlopetri was built to endure both time and environmental pressures. The engineering reflects foresight, skill, and an intimate knowledge of material properties. Artifacts and organic samples recovered from floor layers allow archaeologists to date the settlement to the early Bronze Age, placing it among the oldest known planned cities. Charcoal, seeds, and fragments of pottery embedded in floor sediments provide radiocarbon dating estimates ranging from approximately 2800 to 2200 BCE. This timeframe situates Pavlopetri contemporaneously with other early Mediterranean communities but distinguishes it for its urban layout. The dating also highlights the settlement's resilience, surviving until submersion without leaving signs of catastrophic destruction, indicating that it was gradually abandoned as environmental conditions shifted. Geological studies indicate that gradual tectonic activity and rising seas eventually claimed the settlement, submerging streets and buildings over centuries. Sediment analysis reveals that minor earthquakes and slow subsidence contributed to the sinking of Pavlopetri, while post-glacial sea level rise steadily encroached on the coastal plain. Unlike sites destroyed suddenly, Pavlopetri appears to have experienced a measured transition from habitable land to shallow seabed. This slow submersion explains why the urban grid remains largely intact, protected from the erosive forces that often scatter or obliterate exposed settlements. Layers of fine sediment envelop the structures, preserving the urban layout and allowing detailed mapping that captures the city's scale and organisation. Over time, sand, silt and marine deposits acted as a protective blanket, maintaining the integrity of walls, streets and public spaces. Archaeologists can discern building footprints, thoroughfares and open spaces as clearly as if the city were still on dry land. Even small architectural features such as thresholds and cornerstones survive under this natural coating, providing invaluable insights into early Bronze Age urban design. This preservation has made Pavlopetri a rare benchmark for studying ancient city planning. Trade evidence, including anchors, pottery fragments and amphorae, suggests that the city was part of a wider network of maritime exchange. Artifacts indicate that inhabitants engaged in commerce with other settlements across the Aegean, importing goods and exporting surplus produce. Harbours and quay-like structures hint at docking areas, enabling ships to load and unload cargo efficiently. These features reinforce the idea that Pavlopetri was not an isolated settlement, but an integrated hub of economic activity, demonstrating how urban planning extended beyond domestic spaces to accommodate trade and logistics. Working underwater presents unique challenges. Visibility is limited, currents shift unpredictably, and even minor excavation risks damage to the fragile remains. Divers must navigate carefully while avoiding disturbance to the sediment that preserves the site, often using underwater grids and photogrammetry to document structures without direct contact. Mapping is a painstaking process, with every line, block and corner recorded digitally to prevent misinterpretation. These constraints mean that, despite decades of study, only a fraction of the site has been fully explored, leaving room for discoveries in the years ahead. The uniformity of blocks and thoroughfares implies coordinated planning, hinting at social structures capable of organising large-scale construction efforts. Urban order suggests roles and hierarchies, possibly including civic leaders, master builders, and communal labour forces. While no written records survive, the evidence of careful spacing, street width standardisation, and block orientation points to a society that valued both efficiency and cohesion. Pavlopetri stands as a testament to human capacity for planning and organisation, demonstrating that even ancient communities could achieve urban complexity previously thought impossible at this stage of civilization. Pavlopetri remains a rare glimpse of early Bronze Age urban design, preserved in near complete form for archaeologists to study. Its stone streets, foundation outlines, and intersecting blocks reveal a city whose principles of organisation have survived millennia. Unlike many other submerged sites, Pavlopetri offers a continuous plan that allows reconstruction of civic, residential, and commercial zones. The settlement not only informs our understanding of early Mediterranean urbanism, but also provides a lens into how humans once balanced environmental pressures with societal ambition, all before the advent of recorded history. Its straight streets and measured corners endure quietly, leaving only speculation about the minds that orchestrated such precise order millennia ago. 5. Yonaguni's terrace stone platforms. Observers were struck by the geometric regularity of terraces stretching across the site, a pattern that suggested intentional design rather than randomness. The Yonaguni monument off the southern coast of Japan consists of stone platforms descending in broad, stepped formations that have long fascinated researchers. Even at a glance, the structure's flat surfaces and angular corners imply a level of order uncommon in natural sandstone outcrops, prompting questions about human intervention. These terraces, while submerged by rising seas after the last glacial period, remain largely intact, presenting a rare opportunity to study ancient formations whose origins continue to divide opinion among scientists and archaeologists alike. Initial surveys relied on diverse photographs and sonar scans, revealing levels and ledges aligned with surprising uniformity. Early explorers documented the site in the 1980s, capturing images that highlighted the apparent regularity of the platforms and the sharpness of certain edges. Sonar imaging allowed teams to measure the terraces' widths, heights, and spacing, producing maps that suggested a coherent plan rather than random geological fracturing. Video footage recorded during dives displayed wide terraces connecting to smaller ledges and steps, creating patterns that invited detailed mapping and comparative analysis. Each terrace appears to step downward in measured increments, with edges forming apparent right angles that challenge conventional explanations. Measurements indicate that several platforms maintain consistent heights and lengths, often aligned in parallel or perpendicular orientation to neighbouring terraces. Some terraces extend over tens of metres, suggesting the original layout, whether natural or human influence, followed an underlying order. The uniformity creates a visual impression of architectural intention, reinforcing the sense that these formations may have been deliberately shaped or augmented in antiquity. The rock itself is layered sandstone, naturally prone to jointing and fracturing, which has fueled debates about the terrace's origins. Geologists emphasize that the region has experienced tectonic uplift, seismic activity and wave erosion over millennia, all of which can produce linear breaks and planar surfaces resembling man-made structures. Horizontal bedding planes and natural fissures can create flat steps, while erosion can exaggerate apparent regularity. Careful study of mineral composition, fracture patterns, and sediment deposition is essential to separate the effects of nature from potential human modification. Some ledges display flat surfaces and parallel lines that appear too regular to result from natural processes alone. These features include long horizontal planes, precise angles, and repetitive step sequences that suggest measurement and shaping. Certain terraces show evidence of deliberate smoothing, with edges less jagged than the surrounding rock. Archaeologists argue that if humans intervened, these platforms could have served functional or ceremonial purposes, from public gatherings to ritual activities. Yet the absence of definitive artifacts directly on the terraces leaves interpretation uncertain, maintaining the site's enigmatic character. Geologists caution that tectonic stress, erosion, and sedimentation can produce formations that mimic human workmanship, leaving interpretation uncertain. Fault lines running through the sandstone create straight fissures and angular fragments that can resemble cut blocks. Wave action gradually removes softer material, exaggerating flatness and perpendicularity in exposed surfaces. These natural processes, combined with selective perception by observers, complicate assertions of artificial construction. The debate continues, with proponents and skeptics weighing physical evidence against geological probability, each side presenting compelling arguments. Carvings and indentations on selected platforms provide subtle evidence that early visitors may have shaped or altered the structures. Shallow grooves, pits, and linear depressions appear on some surfaces, though whether they are natural erosional features or anthropogenic marks remains unclear. The arrangement of certain depressions follows repeating patterns, suggesting purposeful intervention. Even minor alterations could have enhanced the natural terraces for human use, such as ritual activities, navigational markers, or simple observation platforms, adding layers of complexity to the monument's interpretation. Analysis of nearby sediment layers has revealed marine fossils and tool fragments that may indicate human presence in the area around the time the terraces were formed. These discoveries suggest that, even if the terraces originated as natural formations, they were likely utilised, modified, or augmented by early coastal communities. Stone tools, scattered pottery shards, and traces of hearths point to activity along the terraces' edges, hinting at a functional or ritual relationship between humans and these platforms. The convergence of natural stone geometry and human interaction underscores the complexity of interpreting the site and strengthens the argument that Yonaguni was more than a purely geological curiosity. Comparisons with other ancient terraces, both submerged and on land, offer context, but no conclusive parallels to Yonaguni's scale or geometry. Sites in the Ryukyu Islands and parts of East Asia display step-like rock formations, yet few exhibit the same combination of large, flat platforms with sharp edges. Some megalithic terraces on land show clear human construction, but those underwater are far less preserved and harder to attribute definitively. Yonaguni remains distinctive, both for its size and the visual coherence of its terraces, inviting continued exploration and debate. Sediment accumulation and calm water conditions have preserved the terraces remarkably well, allowing detailed measurements of their dimensions. fine sand and silt have settled over ledges, preventing widespread erosion and maintaining the integrity of horizontal planes. In many areas, terraces remain connected by what appear to be steps, ledges and flat platforms, preserving spatial relationships that might otherwise have been lost. Preservation conditions have enabled researchers to perform surveys with confidence, producing accurate 3D models and comparative maps, critical for both geological and archaeological analysis. Researchers employ 3D scanning, photogrammetry and digital modelling to capture the angles and surfaces for further analysis. These technologies allow precise measurement of slope, elevation and surface area, highlighting subtle alignments that could suggest planning. Detailed models also enable simulations of wave and tectonic impact over millennia, providing insight into how natural forces may have shaped the terraces. By combining field observation with digital reconstruction, scientists can evaluate hypotheses regarding human involvement while maintaining rigorous standards of evidence. Assuming human construction, the terrace's purpose is still unknown, with possibilities including ceremonial platforms, navigational markers, or communal spaces. The absence of definitive artifacts or inscriptions leaves room for multiple interpretations, each plausible within the context of early coastal societies. Some researchers speculate that water access may have been significant, with terraces serving as docks, fishing platforms, or ritual entryways to the sea. Others suggest spiritual or symbolic functions, citing the repetition and symmetry as evidence of deliberate symbolic design. The terraces continue to challenge both geologists and archaeologists, resisting any single explanation for their precise arrangement. Every survey uncovers new angles, edges, and features that deepen the mystery, forcing reconsideration of initial assumptions. The interplay between natural processes and potential human activity creates a tension that defines Yonaguni, making it a site where certainty is elusive and discovery remains ongoing. Researchers approach the formations with both caution and curiosity, aware that each measurement could shift interpretations. Their ordered steps endure, provoking questions about whether human ingenuity or natural forces carved this ancient mystery. 6. Bouldnor Cliff's wooden structures. Fragmented timbers and sunken posts emerge from the mudflats at Bouldnor Cliff, hinting at a settlement once constructed entirely from wood. This prehistoric site, located on the Isle of Wight, England, preserves the remains of dwellings and platforms that predate recorded history, offering a rare glimpse into human life during the Mesolithic. Unlike stone or monumental constructions, these wooden structures were built from perishable materials, relying on post frameworks, planks and raised platforms to withstand tides and seasonal flooding. Today only traces survive, yet their arrangement and form reveal purposeful design, reflecting the ingenuity of communities adapting to a shifting coastal landscape long before modern engineering. Initial discovery of the site came from detailed sediment excavation and underwater surveys, which revealed post holes and planked platforms beneath layers of tidal silt. Initial surveys employed coring techniques and divers to locate timber remains in the soft waterlogged mud. Mapping revealed consistent alignments, suggesting deliberate construction rather than random deposition. Photographic documentation captured the faint impressions of planks, stakes and hearth depressions, while sediment analysis confirmed that the layers had remained largely undisturbed. These early investigations established Bouldnor Cliff as one of the few Mesolithic sites in Britain where wooden architecture survived in situ, preserved by the unique combination of low oxygen and fine silt. The surviving structures suggest sophisticated joinery, with horizontal beams resting on vertical posts, forming raised walkways and dwelling foundations adapted to fluctuating water levels. Some platforms extend across several meters, indicating communal spaces or multi-room dwellings. The alignment of posts and planks demonstrates awareness of load distribution and environmental stress, while the use of crossbeams suggests intentional reinforcement. Even in fragmentary form, the evidence points to practical engineering, balancing stability with the limited availability of timber. This construction allowed the inhabitants to elevate their living areas above tidal waters, reflecting a keen understanding of their environment. Through careful microscopic study, traces of tool marks were found on the timber surfaces, matching early woodworking methods like chopping, scraping and pecking, revealing how the planks and posts were crafted. The precision of some cuts suggests not only functional construction, but also an understanding of stress distribution, indicating that the builders were attentive to both durability and environmental conditions. Combined with pollen and sediment studies, these markings reveal how the inhabitants selected and prepared specific tree species, optimizing strength and resilience for structures designed to endure fluctuating water levels and tidal action. Anaerobic mud has preserved delicate wooden elements for millennia, preventing decay and allowing modern researchers to study construction methods rarely visible elsewhere. The absence of oxygen slows microbial activity, keeping organic matter intact long after exposure would have led to total degradation. This preservation enables the study of tool marks, plank shaping, and joinery techniques, providing insight into the materials and labour involved. Without this protective sediment, the Bouldnor Cliff structures would have vanished like countless other wooden settlements, leaving little evidence of Mesolithic ingenuity behind. Dendrochronology and radiocarbon dating indicate the timber was felled during the Mesolithic, placing the settlement in a pre-flood era when sea levels were lower. Analyses of tree rings allow precise estimation of felling years and seasonal conditions, while carbon dating confirms the structures are roughly 8,000 years old. These methods situate Bouldnor Cliff within a period of significant environmental change when rising seas gradually transformed the landscape. The timing of the settlement highlights how Mesolithic communities anticipated and adapted to gradual flooding, choosing elevated platforms and raised dwellings as a precaution against encroaching waters. Post alignments and plank arrangements hint at domestic and communal spaces, suggesting raised platforms for homes, storage areas, and workspaces above the tidal flats. Some areas appear to have been partitioned, possibly delineating family units or specialized work zones. Elevated pathways connect clusters of posts, allowing movement between spaces without stepping into wet sediment. The layout suggests thoughtful organization, where daily routines, cooking, crafting, storage, and social interaction were structured around both functionality and environmental constraints. Within the mud, tools, wooden utensils, and plant remains offer tangible insight into daily life, including diet, technology, and material culture. Flint blades, bone tools, and fragments of woven reeds indicate a community adept at resource use. Seeds, nutshells, and remnants of fish bones suggest reliance on both foraging and fishing. These discoveries illuminate not only subsistence strategies but also craftsmanship, illustrating how Mesolithic people combined natural resources with ingenuity to sustain their livelihoods in a dynamic coastal environment. The surrounding landscape once featured estuaries, reed beds, and tidal channels, offering resources for fishing, foraging, and small-scale agriculture. Pollen analysis reveals a mix of woodland and open marshes, while sediment cores show evidence of seasonal inundation. These conditions provided abundant food sources but also required careful architectural planning to avoid flooding. The inhabitants' intimate knowledge of their environment is evident in the siting and construction of their wooden platforms, demonstrating an early form of ecological adaptation. Gradual sea level rise and sediment deposition eventually submerged the settlement, encasing timbers in mud that both concealed and preserved them for future discovery. Rising tides transformed the estuary landscape, leaving the structures buried beneath layers of silt and clay. This slow process shielded the wood from oxygen and bacterial decay, effectively freezing a moment of human activity in time. Without these natural preservative conditions, the Bouldnor Cliff settlement would have long since vanished, leaving only speculative traces of its existence. Excavating the fragile structures requires painstaking care, with each post and plank meticulously recorded and stabilized to prevent damage during study. Archaeologists employ fine brushes, water-based lifting techniques, and temporary supports to handle timbers that are both ancient and brittle. Documentation is critical, with 3D scanning, photography, and measured drawings, ensuring that every feature is recorded before it loses structural integrity. These methods allow detailed reconstruction of the layout and provide a permanent record of a settlement that might otherwise collapse under the pressure of exposure. The settlement demonstrates early human ingenuity, showing how communities adapted architecture and lifestyle to a changing and flood-prone environment. By elevating dwellings on posts and creating connected platforms, the inhabitants mitigated the risks of tidal flooding while maintaining functional spaces for living and working. This foresight reveals an understanding of hydrology, construction, and community planning, illustrating that even small Mesolithic groups possessed practical engineering skills and the ability to respond to environmental pressures over time. Even after millennia, the wooden platforms at Bouldnor Cliff retain the imprint of human planning, offering insight into ephemeral constructions long thought lost to time. Each surviving post, plank and alignment serves as a reminder of the creativity and adaptability required to live in a dynamic coastal landscape. The settlement not only preserves physical traces, but also embodies the ingenuity and resilience of its inhabitants, whose careful designs allowed them to flourish in an environment that demanded constant attention and adjustment. These waterlogged timbers whisper of lives built with fleeting materials, leaving traces that time nearly erased but cannot fully conceal. 7. Dwelling platforms of Doggerland. Vast lowlands once stretched across northern Europe, where early communities built raised platforms to protect their homes from seasonal floods. Long before the North Sea claimed the land, these Mesolithic plains, later known as Doggerland, were crisscrossed with rivers, marshes and shallow lakes. Here, communities learned to navigate a world in constant flux, where fertile soil and water resources offered abundance, yet demanded innovation to survive. Archaeological evidence now suggests that inhabitants erected timber and reed platforms, creating elevated spaces to live, work, and store resources. These constructions, though fragile, reveal an extraordinary understanding of a landscape that could shift with the seasons and the rising waters of the warming world. Archaeologists pieced together evidence from peat deposits, submerged soil layers, and preserved timber, slowly reconstructing a vanished Mesolithic landscape. Core samples revealed sequences of organic sediment interspersed with layers of clay and silt, indicating repeated flooding events. Timber fragments, once waterlogged and carefully extracted, allowed researchers to map post-alignments and approximate dwellings. By combining environmental data with careful stratigraphy, investigators were able to visualize the layout of these platforms and discern patterns that point to deliberate spatial planning. Each discovery added a fragment to the puzzle, illuminating how humans occupied and reshaped a landscape that would eventually disappear beneath rising waters. Vertical posts and horizontal planks formed elevated dwellings, demonstrating careful planning and a sophisticated response to shifting water levels. Some platforms reached up to 2 meters above the surrounding terrain, supported by timber pegged into peat and clay beds. Joinery techniques were simple yet effective, often combining local hardwoods with flexible reeds or brush to form stable floors. These constructions allowed inhabitants to remain above seasonal inundations, while also providing dry spaces for storing food, crafting tools, and sheltering livestock or domestic animals. The ingenuity of this architecture highlights an early form of environmental engineering, one adapted entirely to the rhythms of nature rather than imposed upon it. Spatial patterns suggest small clusters of platforms, organized to allow movement, communal work, and protection from environmental hazards. Pathways of compacted soil or wooden walkways connected clusters, hinting at social organization and cooperative planning. Some groupings may have served as extended family compounds, while others could have been workshops or trading hubs. The distances between clusters likely reflected both resource distribution and the need to mitigate risk from flooding or erosion. This patchwork of elevated sites demonstrates a balance between community cohesion and the practical demands of a dynamic, flood-prone landscape. Reconstructed vegetation and pollen reveal a rich mix of marshes, forests, and river channels, providing abundant resources for hunting and foraging. Willow and alder groves lined waterways, while reed beds offered material for mats, roofing, and bedding. The proximity of rivers and estuaries supplied fish, shellfish, and access to migratory birds. Pollen studies show a mosaic of plant species, indicating seasonal variation in available food and crafting materials. The environment was both generous and challenging, demanding intimate knowledge of plant cycles, animal behaviors, and water management. Stone implements, wooden tools, and plant remains illuminate daily routines, from food preparation to craft production and construction. Flint blades and scrapers suggest hunting and butchering activities, while fragments of wooden digging sticks and mortars indicate plant processing. Traces of woven materials point to early textile production, likely using reeds, grasses, and flax. Each artifact offers a window into the rhythms of Mesolithic life, demonstrating that inhabitants of Doggerland were adept at exploiting a wide range of resources with skillful tools fashioned from locally available materials. Charred wood and hearth evidence suggest that controlled fires were kept on the platforms, hinting at uses for cooking, warmth and ceremonial or signalling purposes. These hearths were carefully situated to avoid damaging the timber floors, and the placement of ash layers alongside flint debris reveals patterns of repeated use over generations. Charcoal samples also allow dendrochronological comparison, helping to date both the structures and episodes of occupation. The careful management of fire atop fragile platforms demonstrates the Mesolithic inhabitants' intimate knowledge of their environment and their ability to manipulate resources safely in a flood-prone landscape. Remains of fish, shellfish and wild game reveal a balanced approach to subsistence, highlighting adaptability to both waterborne and land-based resources. Fishing nets, hooks and bone points suggest a reliance on riverine and estuarine species, while evidence of deer, wild boar and waterfowl indicates seasonal hunting. Plant remains such as hazelnuts, berries and roots complement these findings, reflecting a varied diet designed to maximize local bounty. This diversity of food sources would have been critical in sustaining communities through seasonal fluctuations and unexpected environmental changes. Elevated floors and modular platforms reveal a flexible approach to settlement, allowing inhabitants to adjust structures as floodwaters advanced and receded. Some platforms show evidence of repairs, reinforcement, or relocation, suggesting awareness of material wear and environmental stress. The ability to dismantle, move, or rebuild sections of the settlement points to a society skilled in both carpentry and risk management. These adaptive strategies allowed communities to persist for generations, even as the landscape around them changed in response to rising seas and shifting river channels. Layers of peat and clay preserved the timbers and artifacts, keeping delicate organic materials intact across millennia. The combination of anaerobic sediment and fine-grained soils prevented decay, protecting evidence of human ingenuity that would otherwise have vanished. Analysis of these deposits not only confirms the age of the structures, but also provides insights into the timing of flood events and environmental change. Preservation of plant fibers, seeds, and tiny wooden fragments offers a rare glimpse into the details of daily life that are seldom recorded in conventional archaeological sites. Investigations demand careful techniques. Coring, sediment analysis, and mapping enable reconstruction of sites that are otherwise invisible to the naked eye. Researchers rely on remote sensing and underwater exploration to detect subtle depressions, post holes, and compacted surfaces. Each sample must be meticulously recorded to avoid loss of critical context. Modern technology, combined with patient excavation methods, allows archaeologists to piece together the organization of Doggerland's dwellings and understand the interplay between human activity and environmental change. The arrangement and design of these platforms reveal ingenuity in early urban planning, reflecting communities that lived in harmony with a changing environment. Elevated dwellings, connected by pathways and distributed in clusters, show an awareness of both social and environmental factors. This planning was not imposed by a rigid architectural tradition, but evolved organically, responding to seasonal flooding, resource locations, and communal needs. The Mesolithic inhabitants of Doggerland demonstrate that even in prehistory, humans were capable of complex problem-solving in response to environmental pressures. Even as modern rivers and soils cover their traces, the platforms of Doggerland speak to the persistence of human adaptation on a shifting plane. Despite the inundation of the region thousands of years ago, careful study of sediment, timber, and artifacts allows us to reconstruct a vivid picture of daily life, social organization, and environmental engagement. These communities thrived in a landscape that demanded resilience, ingenuity, and flexibility, leaving behind patterns and structures that still intrigue researchers today. These ancient platforms endure as silent markers of ingenuity, hinting at lives once attuned to the ebb and flow of a vanishing land. 8. Nan Madol's pre-coastal basalt foundations. The foundations of Nan Madol reveal a deliberate arrangement of massive basalt blocks, hinting at a society capable of reshaping its environment with extraordinary precision. Situated off the eastern coast of Pavlopetri Bay in the Central Pacific, the site consists of nearly 100 artificial islets constructed atop a lagoon, each meticulously composed of enormous stones. Archaeologists have long marvelled at the scale and organisation of the city, which seems to have functioned as both a ceremonial centre and a hub of political authority. The layout and enduring stability of the basalt platforms suggest careful observation of the local terrain, as well as an understanding of how to balance monumental ambition with practical construction. Early explorers and modern archaeologists uncovered linear stone alignments and platform clusters, piecing together the contours of what must have been a carefully planned settlement. Aerial photography and sonar mapping revealed a grid-like arrangement, with causeways connecting the islets, demonstrating a level of planning not often attributed to prehistoric coastal societies. Excavations have identified post holes, retaining walls, and platforms at varying heights, indicating a complex approach to space and structure. Each discovery deepens the mystery of Nan Madol, suggesting a civilization capable of integrating social, religious, and environmental considerations into its monumental architecture. Quarry marks and basalt debris indicate that stones were extracted from nearby volcanic sources, then moved across land and shallow channels using coordinated labour and ingenious methods. Many of the basalt columns weigh several tons, and yet they were transported across distances of hundreds of metres without modern machinery. Researchers have proposed that wooden sledges, rollers and rafts were employed, alongside careful scheduling to harness tides and manpower efficiently. The sheer scale of material handling implies organised communities with knowledge of physics, engineering and collective labour, revealing an impressive level of social coordination. Each platform shows evidence of meticulous construction, with interlocking stones and level surfaces designed to support both residential and ceremonial structures. Stones were shaped to fit snugly, sometimes using smaller stones as wedges, creating durable foundations capable of withstanding centuries of environmental stress. The platforms range in height and size, with some rising nearly 4 metres above the lagoon, providing stability against shifting sediments and minor tidal changes. The precision of this stonework suggests that builders possessed both practical engineering knowledge and an aesthetic sensibility, merging functionality with monumental form. Recent studies of stone tool impressions and basalt chipping patterns suggest that the builders employed a combination of percussion and abrasion techniques to shape massive blocks on site, minimizing breakage during transport. These traces indicate a high level of craftsmanship and an understanding of material properties that allowed precise cutting and fitting without modern metal tools. Additionally, the spatial distribution of unfinished blocks implies designated workshops or staging areas, revealing an organized workflow that balanced labor, risk management, and efficiency. Such evidence underscores the technical sophistication and planning required to assemble Nan Madol's complex of basalt foundations. Spatial analysis suggests a hierarchy of islets. Larger central platforms likely served political and ritual purposes, while peripheral foundations accommodated residential clusters and work areas. Archaeologists have observed that the central islets contain more elaborately constructed retaining walls and ceremonial spaces, possibly indicating elite or priestly use. Smaller, surrounding platforms seem to have functioned as workshops, housing or storage areas, implying a clear division of labour and social stratification. The distribution of platforms demonstrates an understanding of both community organisation and environmental efficiency, allowing inhabitants to navigate and exploit the space effectively. The recovered carved stones, pottery fragments and ceremonial implements provide insight into the relationship between architecture and social organisation. Stone figurines, engraved motifs, and finely crafted tools reveal not only daily life but also ritual practices and cultural expression. The alignment of certain platforms with celestial events hints at an awareness of astronomy, suggesting that ceremonial activities were carefully coordinated with natural cycles. These artifacts imbue the basalt foundations with layers of meaning that extend beyond structural achievement, embedding culture directly into the built environment. Experimental studies propose that organised teams could have used rollers, levers and scaffolding to manoeuvre the enormous basalt blocks into precise positions, demonstrating remarkable logistical planning. Scholars have recreated models showing how relatively small groups could position multi-ton stones with controlled force and timing, while others may have coordinated the transport of blocks across the shallow lagoon on rafts. These reconstructions emphasise that Nan Madol was not merely a collection of stones, but a coordinated human project, requiring knowledge of mechanics, planning, and the disciplined execution of labour over extended periods, geological surveys show that builders accounted for soil stability, coral growth, and tidal sedimentation, ensuring the longevity and resilience of each foundation. Analysis of underlying coral and sediment layers reveals intentional site selection and preparation, with some platforms reinforced to prevent slippage. This indicates a sophisticated understanding of the interaction between natural geology and constructed spaces, allowing the city to endure despite environmental pressures. The integration of local materials with careful engineering underscores the ingenuity of the builders and their capacity to harmonise construction with the landscape. Preservation challenges include erosion, coral incrustation, and partial collapse, requiring archaeologists to rely on stratigraphic analysis and remote mapping to interpret the structures accurately. Modern techniques such as laser scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and sediment coring have provided detailed insights without disturbing the fragile foundations. These investigations continue to uncover subtle features, small retaining walls, sunken channels, and tool marks that hint at construction techniques long forgotten. Each layer of observation reveals new facets of the society responsible for this monumental undertaking. Innovations in construction reveal a sophisticated understanding of weight distribution, interlocking techniques, and foundation reinforcement, highlighting an advanced architectural knowledge for the era. The precision with which basalt blocks were shaped and placed suggests knowledge of material strength and load-bearing principles. In some cases, stones were placed vertically to form walls that double as retaining structures for adjacent platforms, demonstrating both functional and aesthetic consideration. These features suggest that builders were not only skilled labourers, but also engineers and designers who anticipated the long-term demands of their environment. Questions remain about how Nan Madol was built, how the workforce was organised, and how long construction took, leaving much of the site's history shrouded in mystery. The absence of written records from the period forces researchers to infer social structure, hierarchy, and technological capability solely from the physical remnants. While experimentation and modelling offer plausible explanations, the scale and precision of the city continue to inspire debate. Nan Madol's secrets lie embedded in stone, challenging archaeologists to reconcile human ambition with the constraints of prehistoric technology. The basalt foundations endure as a testament to human determination, blending monumental engineering with careful planning in a coastal landscape shaped by both opportunity and challenge. Each platform, wall, and pathway represents the labour of countless individuals whose knowledge, skill, and organisation allowed them to transform raw stone into an enduring cityscape. The site stands as a remarkable fusion of art, utility, and cultural significance, offering a rare glimpse into the vision and capabilities of a pre-coastal society. Nan Madol's stone islands remain silent witnesses to an ancient society whose vision and skill transformed raw basalt into enduring monuments of power and ritual. 9. Eridu's early temple foundations. The earliest temple platforms at Eridu reveal a deliberate ordering of mud brick foundations, signalling the emergence of ritualized space in one of the world's first urban centers. Nestled within the fertile plains of southern Mesopotamia, these structures predate much of recorded history, hinting at communities whose focus extended beyond mere survival. Archaeologists have found that successive layers of construction trace a continuous devotion to place, with each generation modifying and expanding the sacred spaces according to evolving religious needs. The foundations themselves, carefully levelled and compacted, suggest an understanding of stability and an intention to endure, anchoring both architecture and society in a rapidly changing environment. Excavations uncovered layered foundations and remnants of successive temple structures, each revealing a stratified history of devotion and architectural evolution. Archaeologists employed meticulous stratigraphic techniques, peeling back centuries of accumulation to reveal the earliest construction phases. Small artifacts such as clay figurines, votive offerings, and carved seals offer glimpses into ceremonial life, while the organisation of the layers themselves demonstrates that Eridu's builders were not merely constructing buildings, but crafting enduring symbols of community and spiritual order. Settled upon alluvial plains shaped by shifting river channels, Eridu's builders had to contend with soft soils, periodic flooding, and seasonal silt deposits while raising monumental platforms. The builders demonstrated a remarkable ability to integrate their architecture with the landscape, selecting sites where the soil could support substantial mud brick walls and terraces. Ancient channels and levees, still visible in modern surveys, suggest that the community actively managed water flow, both for agriculture and to protect sacred structures. These adaptations reveal a society that combined spiritual ambition with environmental pragmatism, ensuring that temples remained central to communal life. Mud bricks, carefully moulded and sun-dried, form the primary building blocks, sometimes reinforced with straw or stone, reflecting both practical engineering and an understanding of longevity. Analysis of brick composition shows consistent ratios and shapes, suggesting standardized production methods and communal knowledge of material science. Some bricks bear impressions from wooden molds or finger marks, evidence of the human effort embedded directly into the structures. The durability of these materials, preserved despite millennia of exposure to silt and floodwaters, underscores the ingenuity and foresight of Eridu's builders. The temple's layout demonstrates intentional design, with central halls, outer courtyards, and altar spaces arranged to guide movement, sightlines, and ritual practice. Narrow passageways lead to inner sanctuaries, implying that processional routes and spatial sequencing were integral to religious activity. Elevated platforms may have symbolized proximity to the divine, while peripheral courtyards accommodated congregations, offerings, and ceremonies. The combination of functional design and symbolic alignment indicates that Eridu's temples were carefully conceived environments, blending practical utility with spiritual expression. Artifacts recovered from altars, storage rooms, and ceremonial pits indicate the temple's dual role as spiritual centers and repositories of offerings, linking architecture directly to belief. Votive objects, ranging from miniature clay vessels to intricately carved figurines, reflect a range of devotional practices and the investment of resources into ritual life. Archaeologists have also identified traces of food offerings, incense, and pigments, suggesting ceremonies that engaged multiple senses. These findings illuminate the profound integration of material culture and sacred architecture, revealing a society in which spirituality shaped daily and communal life. Clay impressions and ceremonial artifacts provide evidence that Eridu's temples were not only places of devotion, but also early administrative hubs. Small tokens, seals, and symbolic markings indicate that priests may have tracked offerings, labor contributions, and ritual schedules, revealing a merging of sacred and bureaucratic functions. These findings imply that the temples served as hubs of both spiritual authority and early governance, reflecting the sophisticated integration of ritual, economy, and social organization. Coordinated labor was essential, and evidence of communal construction suggests hierarchical organization, with skilled artisans and overseers directing the placement of each foundation layer. Post holes, tool marks, and aligned brick courses indicate careful planning and supervision, hinting at a workforce structured to execute complex tasks efficiently. The coordination required to mix, mold, transport, and assemble thousands of bricks implies both social cohesion and a centralized authority capable of mobilizing labor for sustained projects. The scale of these foundations reflects a society that valued ritual and order as much as survival and sustenance. Early engineering ingenuity is evident in rudimentary drainage channels, leveled terraces, and compacted substructures, ensuring that these mud brick temples withstood both erosion and heavy use. Terraces provided stability on uneven terrain, while shallow channels diverted water away from walls, preventing saturation and collapse. The builders' knowledge of compaction techniques and load distribution allowed multi-room structures to remain intact over centuries, demonstrating a practical grasp of engineering principles long before formalized scientific study. Such innovations illustrate how Eridu's temples were designed to endure both the elements and the demands of ritual activity. Reconstructing Eridu's early structures presents challenges for archaeologists, as centuries of sedimentation and rebuilding obscure the original shapes and dimensions of the temples. Each new excavation reveals overlapping construction phases, collapsed walls, and later modifications, requiring careful analysis to distinguish chronological sequences. Remote sensing, stratigraphic mapping, and meticulous recording of brick composition have helped unravel the architectural evolution. Yet many details of the earliest structures remain speculative. The process of uncovering these foundations resembles reading a palimpsest, where each layer of mud brick tells a story interwoven with history, devotion, and adaptation. Later temple iterations were built atop older platforms, showing a continuity of sacred space and the evolution of ceremonial practices over successive generations. Renovations and expansions suggest not only reverence for the original foundations, but also the capacity to reinterpret architectural form in response to changing social and religious demands. Some additions incorporated stone footings or timber supports, while others extended courtyards or inner halls, reflecting evolving notions of spatial hierarchy and ritual significance. This layering of structures demonstrates how sacred architecture can serve as a living record of societal development. Even with careful examination, the rituals, construction sequencing, and symbolic messages embedded in the architecture remain unresolved. Scholars continue to debate whether specific rooms were reserved for priests, whether processions followed seasonal or lunar patterns, and how the alignment of walls related to celestial observation. Even with advanced archaeological techniques, the motivations, ceremonies, and theological principles guiding the construction of these foundations are largely reconstructed through inference, leaving the full story tantalizingly out of reach. The enduring foundations of Eridu's temples illustrate the sophisticated interplay between human labor, religious devotion, and urban planning in a society at the dawn of civilization. They embody the intersection of technical skill, social organization, and spiritual aspiration, forming a physical record of a culture striving to impose order and meaning upon its environment. Each brick, terrace, and channel conveys the ingenuity of builders who shaped both the sacred and the communal world, leaving a tangible imprint of pre-flood civilization. These mud brick platforms whisper of a people who sought to anchor their faith and authority in the earth itself, long before the flood waters reshaped the land. 10. Telis Sultan's buried defensive walls. Layers of sediment conceal ramparts that once bristled with vigilance, hinting at a city forged to withstand both natural and human threats. Telis Sultan, one of the earliest known urban centres in the Fertile Crescent, occupies a mound rising roughly 30 metres above the surrounding floodplain. Estimates suggest the settlement supported several thousand inhabitants, whose survival depended on both resource management and the careful placement of defensive structures. The walls themselves were more than barriers. They represented foresight, strategy, and the collective effort of a society living in a volatile environment shaped by seasonal rivers and rival communities. Each brick buried beneath soil whispers of centuries where vigilance and adaptation were a constant necessity. Careful excavation of collapsed towers and gate remnants gradually reveals the original defensive design of the city. Archaeologists uncover angular bastions, fortified gateways, and earthen embankments, meticulously mapping their dimensions. Stratigraphy provides insight into multiple construction phases, revealing repairs and extensions over generations. Tools such as trowels, brushes, and ground-penetrating radar allow for the slow unveiling of these walls without causing damage. Each fragment tells a story. Repaired breaches suggest prior attacks, relocated gates indicate urban reorganization, and variations in mud brick composition hint at evolving construction techniques and knowledge transferred between builders over time. The surrounding plains, once crisscrossed by shifting river channels and marshlands, dictated the placement of walls, gates, and watchpoints, forcing builders to adapt to unpredictable terrain. Seasonal floods could transform wide expanses into temporary wetlands, leaving some areas inaccessible and others vulnerable. Elevated terraces were chosen for both visibility and defensive advantage, allowing sentries to monitor approaching groups across the plains. The combination of natural and artificial barriers meant that attackers faced a landscape carefully curated to maximize the defenders' awareness and control, turning the environment itself into a crucial component of the city's security. Mud brick, packed earth, and stone were combined in inventive ways, suggesting that fortifications were continuously modified to meet evolving dangers. Bricks were often sun-dried, but reinforced with compacted earth at base levels, and stone foundations were used where water erosion threatened stability. Evidence shows that mortar mixtures varied according to availability, with some sections reinforced using straw or crushed reeds. Repair layers indicate that walls were not static. Each generation improved upon its predecessor's work. reinforcing sections damaged by floods, wear, or conflict. These construction details highlight a practical intelligence, blending local materials, environmental awareness, and strategic necessity. Defensive corridors and angled bastions reveal a strategic awareness that allowed defenders to monitor approaches and maximize their advantage during potential incursions. Narrow, winding gateways funneled entrance into controlled spaces, while projecting bastions provided lines of sight along adjacent walls. Elevated parapets offered vantage points for archers or sentries, ensuring that attackers could be observed from multiple angles. Even the spacing between towers appears deliberate, facilitating rapid communication across the city. These architectural choices were not arbitrary. They reflect a deep understanding of movement, tactical engagement, and the anticipation of potential threats in a pre-flood urban environment. Burn layers, toppled walls, and embedded arrowheads point to repeated confrontations, indicating that Telis Sultan's inhabitants face sustained external pressures. Charred mud brick remnants suggest episodes of fire, while collapsed embankments hint at the force of battering or flooding. Projectile evidence, including stone and metal-tipped arrows, offers clues to the type and intensity of attacks experienced. Archaeologists interpret these findings as evidence of recurring conflicts that shaped not only the fortifications, but the city's social and defensive practices, demonstrating that survival demanded both physical barriers and adaptive strategies across generations. Daily life within the fortified perimeter balanced security with routine. Markets, storage areas, and movement of people all contended with the constant presence of towering walls. Streets leading to gates were likely narrow and crowded, while workshops and storage rooms nestled close to the walls provided both safety and convenience. The hum of daily activity, the sound of grinding grain, clattering pottery, or the chatter of merchants persisted even under the looming presence of fortifications. Residents navigated spaces designed to protect yet constrain, making the walls both guardians and silent overseers of urban life, shaping behaviour, movement, and social interactions in subtle but pervasive ways. Leadership and labour organisations are visible in the evidence of coordinated repairs and extensions, reflecting a society structured to maintain both defence and civic order. The scale of wall construction implies centralised planning, with resource management including clay sourcing, brick drying, and transport. Labour was likely rotated seasonally, with teams of masons, workers, and overseers contributing to both new construction and maintenance. This organised labour indicates hierarchy and authority, but also the capacity for collective effort and social cohesion, showing that survival depended not only on bricks and mortar, but on governance, planning, and the shared responsibility of the community. Experimental reconstructions and wall simulations illuminate the tactical thought embedded in seemingly simple mud brick structures. Scholars have recreated sections of bastions and gateways to test defensive efficacy, evaluating sightlines, movement, and attack scenarios. These reconstructions reveal how parapets provided cover for defenders, how narrow small groups could defend entrances, and how projecting towers created zones of control along the perimeter. By combining archaeological evidence with experimental modelling, researchers gain insight into the strategic reasoning of the builders, revealing a city designed for vigilance, flexibility, and prolonged defence. Floods and seasonal erosion threaten the integrity of fortifications, prompting the development of adaptive construction techniques that reveal a dialogue between humans and their environment. Sections of wall were rebuilt with reinforced foundations, while drainage channels were incorporated to redirect water away from critical points. Evidence shows repeated maintenance cycles, with successive generations responding to environmental pressures, balancing structural integrity with available resources. These adaptations highlight the inhabitants' understanding of hydrology, seasonal change, and the long-term sustainability of their fortifications, showing a sophisticated interplay between engineering knowledge and environmental awareness. The defensive walls shaped social hierarchy and civic identity, as the protection of the city depended on coordinated labour, leadership, and collective vigilance. Certain towers, gates, or elevated areas were likely restricted to elite individuals or specialised defenders, reinforcing social roles. Daily routines were intertwined with the city's defensive needs, from patrolling walls to participating in communal maintenance. The presence of fortifications not only safeguarded lives but also structured social interaction, authority and community identity, underscoring how architecture and society were inseparable in the orchestration of urban resilience. Even through layers of sediment and centuries of neglect, the fortifications show deliberate attention to placement, strength, and accessibility, reflecting strategic priorities. Each repaired corner, reinforced gate, and modified tower reflects anticipation of potential threats, revealing a civilization acutely aware of both human aggression and environmental risk. The fortifications stand as a testament to foresight, strategic thinking, and the adaptability required to survive in a dynamic pre-flood landscape, where the balance between vulnerability and preparation was constantly negotiated. Encased in earth, the buried walls of Telis Sultan speak quietly of a civilization living on constant alert, guarding against dangers both seen and unseen. 11. Kafasamir's submerged installations. Early surveys revealed a grid of stone platforms resting just offshore, prompting divers to investigate what might be remnants of an ancient coastal settlement. The initial descent into the shallow waters exposed a complex array of stone blocks, channels, and partially buried structures that hinted at a carefully organised network. Sediment and marine growth concealed much of the layout, but glimpses of straight-edge platforms and parallel alignments suggested intentional human design. Archaeologists hypothesize that the site predates major flooding events in the region, raising questions about the purpose of such constructions and the sophistication of the pre-flood communities that built them. Sonar imaging and detailed underwater mapping allowed researchers to trace the exact layout of walls, corridors, and rectangular platforms submerged beneath shifting sands. Advanced techniques, including side-scan sonar and 3D photogrammetry, revealed a coherent pattern spanning several hectares. Every platform, corridor, and channel appeared strategically positioned, suggesting a functional order that might relate to docking, storage, or specialized tasks. By overlaying historical sea level data, researchers could approximate the pre-submersion landscape, revealing how these installations would have interacted with tides, river mouths, and human activity on the shore. Close inspection showed precise cutting and placement of massive stones, suggesting deliberate alignment for stability, weight distribution, and long-term use. Blocks weighing several tons were arranged in regular patterns, with narrow gaps possibly designed for water flow or structural reinforcement. Tool marks, though faint due to centuries underwater, indicate careful shaping with metal or stone implements. Some stones bear depressions that might have accommodated posts, beams, or wooden walkways. The precision and consistency across platforms imply a sophisticated understanding of materials and forces, hinting at planning and coordination well beyond what is usually assumed for pre-flood coastal communities. Evidence of storage pits, mooring posts, and channels hints that the installations may have served both industrial and maritime purposes for a thriving pre-flood community. Certain platforms contained recessed areas that could have held large containers, while channels and depressions suggest the management of watercraft or the movement of goods. Some features appear to facilitate tidal flushing or drainage, further supporting a functional maritime role. These installations may have acted as both practical infrastructure and logistical hubs, demonstrating a civilization capable of integrating construction, environmental understanding, and human activity in complex and enduring ways. Recovered items, including ceramic fragments, grinding stones, and remnants of wooden beams, suggest daily activity alongside larger structural engineering. Pottery shards display varied forms and finishes, implying storage, transport, or food preparation. Small stone tools indicate craft work or maintenance, while fragments of wood preserved in anaerobic sediment hint at walkways, jetties, or scaffolding. Each artifact serves as a tangible link to human activity, complementing the broader structural layout. The juxtaposition of functional objects and massive constructions illustrates the dual priorities of survival and societal organization, reflecting a culture both industrious and remarkably adaptive to its coastal environment. Organic remnants, from charred seeds to fish bones, reveal details about the diet and subsistence strategies of Kafasamir's inhabitants before the flood. Archaeologists have recovered evidence suggesting that the coastal population cultivated nearby fields and engaged in small-scale fishing or shellfish collection. Analysis of plant remains indicates grains and legumes may have been stored in stone pits, while remnants of fish and mollusks reveal reliance on the sea for sustenance. These discoveries illuminate how the community balanced maritime resources with terrestrial agriculture, reflecting a nuanced understanding of local ecology. Combined with the structural evidence, these organic finds provide context for daily life, revealing how the inhabitants organized their work, food storage and consumption in a pre-flood landscape. The stratigraphy and marine deposits point to a rapid sea level increase that submerged the installations, leaving their function frozen beneath the waves. Geological studies suggest that a combination of post-glacial sea level rise and local tectonic activity transformed the coastline dramatically. Layers of silt and sand interspersed with shells and marine debris record the timeline of submersion, while erosion patterns reveal which structures were most exposed to currents. The suddenness of this inundation hints at both environmental volatility and human vulnerability, preserving the installations as an unintended archive of a vanished shoreline civilization. The force of currents and waves over centuries caused selective erosion, revealing some structural details while concealing others beneath silt and coral growth. Certain platforms remain sharply defined, their edges resistant to decay, while softer materials and wooden elements have mostly disappeared. Marine organisms have colonized surfaces, adding an organic complexity that complicates interpretation, but also provides clues to post-submersion ecological change. Diver observations, coupled with underwater photography, allow archaeologists to distinguish original human modifications from natural erosion, revealing both the durability of construction and the ongoing interaction between human design and environmental forces. Comparisons with nearby coastal settlements suggest these installations were part of a broader network of trade, resource management, and coastal engineering. Archaeologists note similarities in layout and materials with contemporaneous sites along the eastern Mediterranean, implying the transmission of architectural knowledge and practical skills. Trade and communication may have influenced both design and function, creating a regional standard for handling maritime traffic, storage, and industrial activities. These parallels underscore the sophistication of pre-flood societies and hint at a connected, highly organized human presence along the coastline long before recorded history. The alignment of platforms and channels reflects careful planning, demonstrating an understanding of tidal forces, load-bearing and water management that defies simple assumptions about pre-flood communities. Spacing and orientation appear optimized for the movement of goods, boats, and possibly livestock or stored materials. Depressions and low-lying channels may have been intended to manage seasonal water fluctuations, while elevated platforms resisted minor flooding. Such deliberate engineering reveals that inhabitants of Kafasamir possessed knowledge of physics, environmental dynamics, and logistics, weaving natural forces into the very structure of their installations with purposeful foresight. Certain carved stones and unusual platform shapes hint at ceremonial or symbolic use, suggesting a purpose beyond purely practical functions. Intricate carvings, geometrical arrangements, or raised features distinguish some platforms from purely functional areas. These could mark ownership, indicate ritual activity, or serve as focal points for communal gatherings. While definitive interpretations remain elusive, the presence of these elements alongside utilitarian structures highlights the complex social and spiritual life of the pre-flood population, integrating culture and function in ways that remain partially hidden beneath the waters. Though surveyed in detail, the site continues to conceal secrets, including enigmatic structures unrelated to known industrial or maritime functions. Some platforms appear isolated, with no obvious connection to adjacent channels or storage areas, raising questions about their original purpose. Archaeologists continue to debate whether these features represent lost technologies, ceremonial constructions, or experimental engineering. The persistence of such mysteries keeps Kafasamir at the forefront of pre-flood archaeological study, providing a reminder that even well-documented sites retain elements that defy easy explanation. The site challenges assumptions about pre-flood engineering, offering insight into a civilization capable of complex construction and adaptive coastal living. Every aligned platform, channel, and recovered artifact contributes to a narrative of ingenuity, environmental awareness, and societal organization. By synthesizing structural evidence, artifact analysis, and environmental data, researchers begin to reconstruct the rhythms of human life at Kafasamir. Yet each discovery also reinforces the fragility of these coastal communities in the face of rising waters, underscoring the delicate balance between human ambition and natural forces in shaping history. A labyrinth of stone and sand lies beneath the waves, preserving enigmas of a vanished people whose coastal ingenuity remains largely unreadable. 12. Gunung Padang's lower megalithic layers. Rising above the surrounding plains, Gunung Padang appears as a series of stone terraces, yet hidden deeper are layers of megalithic construction that continue to confound researchers. From a distance, the site seems like a simple terraced hill, but excavations have revealed a complexity that suggests far older origins than previously imagined. The terraces themselves, layered one atop another, conceal massive blocks meticulously positioned, some of which extend into soil deposits that have accumulated over millennia. Archaeologists are drawn not only to the visible structures, but to the mysteries buried beneath, where human skill and ingenuity are recorded in every carefully aligned stone. As surface stones were meticulously removed, archaeologists revealed the lower strata, uncovering organised blocks that suggest far older construction than had been assumed. Initial excavations uncovered massive basalt stones arranged in patterns that imply intention, not random placement. Each layer revealed further terraces below, creating a multi-tiered complex that hinted at advanced planning and structural knowledge. The lower levels, some entirely hidden until these excavations, included larger stones than those on the surface, suggesting that earlier builders worked on a grander scale than once thought. These discoveries prompted a re-evaluation of what human societies were capable of long before recorded history. Ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity studies uncovered successive stone layers, hinting at multiple building phases separated by centuries or even millennia. Geophysical surveys revealed structures extending dozens of meters beneath the apparent terraces, forming interlocking platforms and chambers. Some anomalies in the radar data suggested voids or chambers filled with compacted earth, possibly indicating ceremonial or communal spaces. Core drilling allowed archaeologists to extract samples without disturbing the site, revealing alternating layers of soil, stone and sediment that preserved the architectural history like pages in a book. These findings pointed to a deliberate phased construction rather than a single building effort. Massive basalt stones are arranged in geometric patterns, some interlocking with precision, demonstrating a level of engineering sophistication that challenges conventional understanding of early civilizations. Stones weighing several tons are carefully shaped and aligned to fit snugly with neighbouring blocks, suggesting knowledge of load distribution and stability. In certain sections, the placement of stones forms patterns that appear intentional, possibly serving structural or symbolic purposes. The regularity of spacing and orientation hints at a plan far beyond mere utilitarian construction. Observing these arrangements, archaeologists are left to wonder whether such precision could have been achieved without organised labour and advanced engineering techniques. The logistics of moving and positioning stones weighing several tons imply coordinated labour, advanced tools and intricate planning, pointing to a highly organised society. Estimates suggest hundreds of workers would have been necessary to quarry, transport and install the massive stones. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that even with simple tools, moving blocks of this size requires sophisticated techniques and teamwork. Pathways and ramps identified in the surrounding terrain may have been deliberately constructed to facilitate the transportation of stone from nearby volcanic outcrops. This level of coordination and social organisation suggests that the lower layers of Gunung Padang were not built haphazardly, but reflect a society with the capability to plan on a monumental scale. Radiocarbon analysis of underlying charcoal and sediment suggests that some of these lower terraces may predate known Neolithic timelines, raising profound questions about human history. Samples from deep soil layers indicate ages that challenge conventional archaeological chronologies, with some estimates placing construction several thousand years earlier than previously recognised. While these dates are debated, they force a reconsideration of early human capabilities in Southeast Asia. The stratigraphy shows continuous accumulation over millennia, preserving evidence of human activity that may coincide with pre-flood societies. These temporal anomalies invite speculation about lost traditions of engineering and the possibility of civilizations whose achievements have long been forgotten. If these layers indeed predate established civilizations, they indicate social complexity and architectural knowledge previously thought impossible for that era. The terrace layers are more than mere foundations. They represent planning, knowledge of structural principles, and perhaps even a societal hierarchy capable of orchestrating large-scale construction. Such complexity suggests that these communities possessed cultural, ceremonial, and technological sophistication far beyond what is assumed for their time. The possibility of an advanced pre-flood culture constructing these terraces challenges traditional historical narratives and raises questions about the continuity of human ingenuity across forgotten epochs. The volcanic terrain and natural terraces of the region may have guided the placement of stones and influenced settlement patterns, integrating human construction seamlessly with the landscape. Builders appear to have selected sites that enhance stability while creating visually imposing terraces. The natural contours of the hill may have dictated the layout of platforms, with stone placement reinforcing slopes and creating flat areas for habitation or ritual use. Observing how the constructions follow the land's natural inclines, archaeologists recognize an intimate understanding of the environment, blending human ingenuity with geological opportunity to produce enduring structures. Certain stones appear deliberately oriented, possibly aligned with celestial events, or intended as ceremonial markers, adding a spiritual dimension to the enigmatic site. Lines of stones may correlate with solstices or lunar cycles, hinting at an astronomical awareness embedded in the construction. Additionally, some megaliths bear cup-like depressions or carving marks, suggesting ritual significance. The combination of architectural precision and symbolic alignment points to a culture that valued both functionality and cosmological meaning. Such duality enhances the mystery, leaving observers to contemplate the purposes that guided these ancient builders in creating monumental structures. Researchers remain divided, with some suggesting natural formations, while others insist on deliberate human construction, highlighting the ongoing controversy surrounding Gunung Padang. Skeptics argue that volcanic activity and natural fracturing could produce apparent terraces, while advocates of human construction point to the interlocking stones, alignment patterns, and consistency across layers. This debate has prompted international attention and interdisciplinary studies, combining geology, archaeology, and engineering to analyze evidence. The controversy underscores the challenge of interpreting pre-flood sites, where nature and human intervention are often closely intertwined, leaving definitive conclusions elusive. Core drilling and stratigraphic analysis continue to reveal anomalies in stone placement and layering that defy easy explanation, leaving the purpose and origin of these terraces uncertain. Some cores reveal massive basalt blocks at unexpected depths, arranged in patterns inconsistent with surface terraces. Sediment layers occasionally show abrupt transitions, suggesting episodes of construction or modification over long periods. These anomalies raise questions about the techniques and motivations of the builders, with some scholars proposing lost traditions or knowledge that have not survived in the historical record. Every new sample adds to the enigma, deepening the sense of wonder surrounding Gunung Padang. Gunung Padang challenges modern assumptions about early engineering, suggesting that human ingenuity and pre-flood construction capabilities may have been far more advanced than previously imagined. The lower terraces, with their intricate arrangements and monumental scale, imply a level of societal organization capable of coordinating labor, knowledge, and ritual practice. Each layer of stone represents deliberate effort, hinting at a culture with both practical and symbolic expertise. In considering the scope and sophistication of these constructions, researchers must reevaluate what is possible in early human history, acknowledging achievements that have been obscured by time. The lower megalithic layers of Gunung Padang rise through the soil like echoes of a civilization whose secrets have yet to be deciphered. 13. Valletta's prehistoric temple foundations. Valletta, now famed for its Baroque architecture and fortified harbours, conceals beneath its streets a far older narrative, whispered by the foundations of prehistoric temples buried under layers of sediment and coastal shifts. Archaeologists probing the Maltese Islands have uncovered stone alignments and platform remnants that date back to a period when the archipelago's coastlines were markedly lower, suggesting these constructions were intentionally situated in a landscape reshaped by rising seas and storm surges. The foundations, meticulously cut and aligned, hint at ceremonial purposes, yet the floods that followed have left much of their original arrangement obscured, challenging researchers to reconstruct the visions of those who built them. Excavations in Valletta's outlying districts revealed large limestone blocks, arranged in circular and rectangular formations, echoing the megalithic traditions seen elsewhere in Malta, such as at Mehrgarh and Mehrgarh. These stone bases, some weighing several tons, show tool marks consistent with early Neolithic quarrying techniques, where simple chisels and stone hammers sufficed to shape monumental structures. Archaeologists note that the precise positioning of these blocks aligns with certain solar and lunar cycles, suggesting an awareness of astronomical patterns. Yet the flood layers above the foundations obscure the full intent of these alignments, leaving only tantalizing traces of a civilization wrestling with both the sea and the sky. Sediment cores taken around Valletta reveal alternating layers of sand, silt, and clay that correspond to episodic flooding events, likely driven by rising Mediterranean waters in the 4th and 3rd millennia BCE. Within these layers, fragments of pottery, small figurines, and carved stones have been recovered, hinting at ritual activity performed upon the temple platforms. The discoveries suggest a community not only aware of seasonal and environmental changes, but also compelled to anchor its sacred spaces in places that would endure the encroaching waters. Each layer tells a story of resilience and adaptation, yet it also conceals the original scale and grandeur of the temples. Among the more striking finds are compacted floors made of crushed stone and clay, seemingly laid with deliberate care, possibly to elevate sacred spaces above ground, prone to periodic inundation. These floors, often found beneath meters of flood-deposited sediment, retain faint impressions of wooden posts and rudimentary hearths, implying that the temple precincts were active, lived-in sites rather than purely symbolic constructions. The repeated burial beneath flood layers has preserved these floors in a form that challenges modern interpretations, leaving scholars to debate whether they served purely ceremonial functions or also accommodated communal gatherings, storage, and ritual feasts. Archaeological teams have noted that some standing stones within the foundations exhibit weathering patterns inconsistent with mere exposure to wind and rain, suggesting that water played a major role in reshaping the site over centuries. Evidence of scouring and sediment displacement indicates that the area experienced sudden surges, perhaps linked to storm-driven waves or tsunamis, which swept away parts of the original temple layout. These shifts have forced archaeologists to rely on fragmentary data, piecing together a structure whose full design may forever remain partially submerged in the imagination. The discovery of carved motifs among collapsed walls reveals that the temples were richly adorned with symbolic art, possibly symbolizing fertility, celestial bodies, or ancestral spirits. The designs echo other Maltese megalithic sites, where spirals, zigzags, and concentric circles dominate the decorative language. Yet the Valletta foundations are distinct in their integration with pre-flood terrain, seemingly sited to take advantage of natural elevations and stone outcrops, implying a sophisticated understanding of both geology and hydrology. Flood sediments now conceal much of these artistic expressions, leaving only partial glimpses of a symbolic system once intimately tied to the land. Excavation reports describe clusters of small depressions and channels within the temple platforms, which some researchers interpret as primitive drainage systems. These features suggest that the builders anticipated flooding or heavy rainfall, constructing means to divert water away from sacred spaces. While the exact purpose of these channels remains uncertain, their presence underscores the ingenuity of communities living in a precarious coastal environment, attempting to assert permanence in a landscape subject to relentless natural forces. The floods themselves, though destructive, inadvertently preserved the stonework beneath protective layers of silt. Organic remains, including charred seeds and animal bones, provide further insight into the ceremonial and subsistence practices surrounding the temples. Carbon dating places some of these deposits in the late Neolithic, indicating that the sites remained active for centuries despite environmental instability. Researchers speculate that rituals may have included offerings to water deities or ceremonies acknowledging seasonal flooding, reflecting a worldview deeply intertwined with the shifting rhythms of sea and sky. Yet each flood layer obscures not only evidence of activity, but also the voices and intentions of the people themselves. Underwater surveys off the modern coast of Valletta have revealed submerged extensions of the temple precincts, where limestone platforms continue beneath shallow Mediterranean waters. These submerged sections, now silted over, hint at a far larger complex than the portions excavated on land. Geologists suggest that gradual sea level rise, compounded by storm surges, would have gradually submerged lower terraces, leaving only the higher foundations visible until recent archaeological efforts began tracing their outlines. The waterlogged preservation offers both clues and frustrations, revealing remnants while concealing the full story. Intricate stone alignments uncovered near the temple's central axis suggest a deliberate orientation toward distant horizon points, where the sun or moon would rise during solstices and equinoxes. This astronomical alignment echoes patterns found at other prehistoric Maltese sites, reinforcing the idea that temple builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles. However, flooding and sediment deposition obscure precise measurements, leaving modern investigators to reconstruct alignments from fragmentary evidence, often debating whether shifts were intentional or the result of centuries of natural disruption. The temple's sheer scale, partially revealed through aerial surveys and ground-penetrating radar, challenges earlier assumptions about the organisational capacity of Malta's prehistoric communities. Constructing these foundations would have required coordinated labour, specialised knowledge of stoneworking, and an understanding of the coastal terrain to mitigate flood risks. Each stone placement, each carefully levelled platform, reflects an advanced architectural vision confronting a dynamic environment, where rising waters threatened permanence and demanded adaptation. Modern archaeologists continue to marvel at the precision achieved with tools that were, by contemporary standards, rudimentary at best. Despite centuries of sedimentation and flooding, Valletta's prehistoric foundations offer a tangible connection to a world long submerged beneath rising seas. As archaeologists piece together these remnants, the stones themselves seem to whisper of communities attuned to celestial patterns, skilled in engineering and resilient against nature's unpredictability. Every fragment recovered adds nuance to a story of survival, ritual, and architectural ambition that predates written history, revealing a civilization whose achievements risked being erased by the encroaching waters. Even as researchers continue to map and study the buried stones, each excavation uncovers only a portion of a grand design, leaving an unsettling sense that much of the temple's original mystery remains forever submerged beneath Malta's ever-shifting coastline. 14. Mehrgarh's mud brick complexes. Nestled in the Kachi plain of modern-day Pakistan, Mehrgarh's ancient mud brick complexes rise in the archaeological record like whispers of a pre-flood world shaped by both cultivation and water. Beneath the surface, layers of alluvial sediment preserve traces of rectangular dwellings, storage platforms, and communal spaces, hinting at a settlement meticulously adapted to the shifting rhythms of riverine flooding. Archaeologists have unearthed walls partially intact, revealing how early communities constructed enduring foundations in a landscape prone to inundation. Each discovery speaks to both human ingenuity and vulnerability, as rising waters repeatedly reshape the contours of this early agricultural society. Each mud brick wall, compacted and sun-dried, bears the faint imprint of fingers and rudimentary tools, evidence of builders who shaped their homes from the earth itself. The bricks, often stacked in alternating courses and bound with clay mortar, were remarkably uniform, suggesting a deliberate standardization of construction techniques. Observations of corner joints and post holes indicate careful planning, with structures oriented to maximize stability on soft floodplain soil. Even after millennia, the impressions of wooden beams and doorframes remain, testifying to a society capable of precise engineering despite the simplicity of its tools and materials. The surrounding alluvial plains tell of rivers that once shifted unpredictably, leaving layers of silt and clay that both nurtured crops and threatened the fragile settlements. Seasonal flooding, driven by monsoon rains and glacial melt from distant highlands, deposited fertile sediment across the plains, sustaining barley and wheat cultivation. Yet these same waters often breached embankments, inundating houses and storage areas. The landscape's constant oscillation between nourishment and destruction frame the daily life of Mehrgarh's inhabitants, forcing them to read subtle signs in the soil, track river channels, and position structures to survive what nature periodically reclaimed. Within these rectangular enclosures, hearths and storage pits hint at daily routines, the preparation of food, the careful preservation of grains, and the rhythms of an agrarian society. Charred seeds, fragments of baked bread, and small ceramic vessels reveal not just sustenance but an early understanding of food, security, and community planning. Hearths are frequently aligned near central rooms, indicating communal cooking or ceremonial functions, while storage pits suggest foresight in anticipating seasonal scarcity. These features, often buried beneath flood layers, preserve the intimate scale of human activity, offering a tangible glimpse into the lives of people whose efforts were repeatedly swallowed by the plains they cultivated. Amidst scattered pottery and collapsed walls, evidence emerges of rapid flooding events that compelled residents to reconstruct or leave parts of the settlement. Evidence of rapid burial suggests flash flooding rather than gradual inundation, as collapsed mud brick walls were quickly covered by fine silt. Such events may have left entire households preserved in situ, providing modern archaeologists with a rare snapshot of early domestic organisation. Yet each layer also obscures details, leaving gaps in understanding and raising questions about how communities coped with repeated natural disasters over generations. Larger mud brick platforms suggest spaces devoted to collective gatherings, where decisions were made and rituals performed, yet the floods have erased much of the original design. These elevated structures, sometimes several metres across, appear to have served as both ceremonial centres and hubs for resource management. Post holes within the platforms imply temporary roofing or canopies, possibly for public assemblies or religious observances. The scale of these communal constructions points to an organised society with social hierarchies and shared labour, even as the full layout has been fragmented by centuries of sediment deposition and shifting river courses. Scattered figurines and carved clay tokens embedded in the flood deposits speak to symbolic practices, offering glimpses into beliefs now partially lost beneath the alluvial soil. Small female figurines, many with exaggerated features, suggest fertility or protective rituals, while geometric motifs painted on pottery hint at cosmological symbolism. Placement of these objects within dwellings and public areas may have corresponded with seasonal cycles, agricultural rites, or flood appeasement ceremonies. The deliberate inclusion of such artifacts amid domestic and communal spaces demonstrates an intertwining of daily life with spiritual concerns, yet the full meaning remains veiled by the layers of sediment that preserved them. Traces of raised floors, shallow channels, and embankments indicate that early residents attempted to tame the waters, constructing primitive defences against the floods that persistently challenged them. Raised platforms kept living areas above the reach of seasonal silt deposits, while small channels diverted excess water away from dwellings. Evidence of reinforced walls, sometimes layered with additional mud or stone fragments, suggests repair and adaptation over generations. These measures highlight a sophisticated understanding of hydrology and environmental engineering, yet they also underscore the precariousness of life in a floodplain where even careful planning could be undone by a sudden surge. Meticulous excavation has revealed the hidden layout of Mehrgarh, where micro-artifacts and soil composition allow scholars to reconstruct rooms, streets, and ceremonial spaces once buried beneath layers of silt. Stratigraphic analysis exposes repeated building phases, illustrating cycles of occupation, destruction, and reconstruction. Tiny objects from spindle whorls to bone tools reveal specialized tasks and domestic crafts, mapping a society that balanced survival, labor, and ritual. Despite the precision of modern methods, much remains uncertain. Entire sections of the settlement may lie unexcavated, hidden beneath meters of flood-deposited sediment, leaving the true extent of Mehrgarh's pre-flood architecture largely speculative. Mudbrick's organic fragility leaves walls crumbling into soil, forcing archaeologists to interpret fragments and partial impressions rather than intact buildings, preserving only shadows of what once stood. Unlike stone foundations, these earthen structures rarely survive intact for millennia, meaning that interpretation often relies on comparative studies and careful reconstruction. Subtle differences in brick composition, Mortar texture and alignment can indicate functional distinctions between dwellings, storage areas, and public platforms. Yet every excavation layer also carries uncertainty, as natural erosion and flood activity blend human and environmental traces into a single, enigmatic record. The settlement's design foreshadows the urban sophistication of later Indus cities, suggesting that lessons in adaptation, engineering, and ritual were carried forward even after floodwaters reshaped the plains. Streets and communal layouts hint at early attempts at zoning, drainage management, and agricultural planning that would evolve into the standardized urbanism of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. While the scale remains smaller and the materials less durable, the underlying principles of organization and environmental awareness reveal a continuity of thought across centuries. Each mud brick fragment thus serves as both evidence of ingenuity and a reminder of what remains hidden beneath the sediment. The full extent of Mehrgarh remains obscured despite decades of study, a labyrinth of mud brick and soil shielding the innovations and daily life of its first farmers. Archaeologists have mapped only portions of the settlement, leaving tantalizing glimpses of streets, dwellings, and communal spaces buried beneath silt. Their exact dimensions and interconnections still speculative. Every excavation uncovers partial arrangements, ephemeral traces, and remnants of life interrupted by floods, preserving both the achievements and the uncertainties of a civilization that mastered cultivation but could not halt the encroaching waters. Through millennia of sediment and flood, the remains of walls and the silent legacy of a lost civilization have endured. 15. Çatalhöyük's flood-buried neighborhoods. Voices of the past seem to echo from the densely packed rooms, where communities once navigated streets and rooftops now concealed beneath layers of flood deposits. Archaeologists have uncovered neighborhoods that reveal multi-generational occupation, where each successive family rebuilt atop the remains of predecessors, creating a vertical complexity unparalleled in contemporary Neolithic settlements. The thick mud brick walls, hearths, and niches tell of ordinary life interwoven with the unpredictable rhythms of floodwaters, which repeatedly claimed streets and homes while simultaneously preserving them for future discovery. Every fragment recovered offers a fleeting glimpse of domestic order and communal continuity that existed long before the first excavations. Generations left their mark one layer at a time, stacking homes, hearths, and floors so densely that time itself became embedded in the city's structure. Roofs often served as the streets of upper levels, linking dwellings in a web of interconnected terraces. Archaeologists examining these stratified levels have observed that rebuilding was frequent, prompted not solely by population growth, but by the subtle destruction wrought by seasonal inundation and river overflows. Even as mud brick eroded under natural forces, the repeated construction created a sedimentary archive of human adaptation, leaving modern researchers to read the city as both a home and a testament to resilience. Every corner contains evidence of daily life, impressions of storage pits, cooking areas, and sleeping spaces that speak to routines long interrupted. Charred seeds and grain remnants recovered from sunken hearths suggest careful planning for food storage and preservation, while pottery fragments hint at both utilitarian and symbolic use. These traces, often found beneath collapsed walls and packed floors, reveal that even in a settlement threatened by water, families maintained continuity in domestic activities. From simple cooking implements to evidence of textile production, the material culture embedded in the neighbourhood offers a remarkably intimate portrait of Neolithic life, preserved paradoxically by the very floods that once threatened it. Sudden sheets of clay and silt, now hardened into layers, record the moments when water surged through rooms, carrying debris and rewriting the neighbourhood's layout. Flood deposits vary in thickness, indicating both minor seasonal overflows and rare catastrophic events capable of sweeping away rooftops and walls. These episodes left a physical signature in the archaeological record: flattened hearths, displaced artifacts, and buried walls that shielded the remnants of daily activity. By examining these layers, researchers gain insight into the dynamic interplay between humans and their environment, revealing a community that had to constantly negotiate the balance between settlement and the forces of nature. In tiny shrines and niches, carefully positioned figurines and painted symbols suggest ceremonies conducted quietly within domestic walls, their meanings obscured by centuries of sediment. Small female figurines, some with abstract features, appear alongside wall paintings depicting animals, geometric motifs, or stylized human forms. Archaeologists interpret these objects as part of a ritual life embedded within ordinary households, indicating that spiritual practice coexisted seamlessly with the demands of subsistence and flood preparedness. The partial preservation of these shrines beneath protective sediment layers lends an eerie intimacy, allowing glimpses of belief systems that might otherwise have vanished entirely. Passageways once traversed on rooftops or between closely spaced houses hint at how movement and social interaction were shaped by the neighbourhood's unique verticality. Streets often functioned as both thoroughfares and communal spaces, connecting homes stacked one atop another while maximising usable ground in a flood-prone landscape. Excavators have noted that entrances, stairways and terraces were carefully positioned to maintain access even after minor inundations, suggesting deliberate urban planning. The interplay of horizontal and vertical circulation reflects a sophisticated approach to settlement design that is rarely observed in Neolithic communities, emphasising both adaptability and cooperation among residents. Tools, charred seeds, and fragmented pottery reveal not only survival strategies, but also subtle artistry and ingenuity preserved beneath protective layers of alluvial deposits. Stone blades and grinding implements indicate agricultural activity, while traces of pigments on pottery hint at aesthetic or symbolic practices. Charred remains of domesticated cereals and pulses show early experimentation with food cultivation and storage, a delicate balance between routine and environmental uncertainty. These artifacts collectively portray a society negotiating the constant tension between human necessity and the whims of natural forces, revealing the resilience and creativity of its inhabitants. Walls built of straw-reinforced mud brick show signs of repeated repair and replastering, testifying to the constant vigilance required to maintain homes amid environmental pressures. The mud brick structures, vulnerable to erosion and water damage, often required seasonal maintenance, with new layers added to strengthen walls and roofs. Evidence of intentional reinforcement suggests that inhabitants understood the structural weaknesses of their materials and developed techniques to prolong the lifespan of dwellings. Such measures reflect a culture acutely aware of its environment, blending practical engineering with habitual labour to safeguard both domestic spaces and communal continuity. By peeling back the layers of the city, archaeologists reveal stratigraphy that speaks of habitation, destruction, and renewal, enabling mapping of hidden networks. By studying soil composition, artifact placement, and wall alignments, archaeologists can distinguish episodes of occupation from periods of abandonment or flood damage. Micro-artifacts recovered from sediment, tiny fragments of tools, food, or ornaments offer insights into specialized activities and domestic organization. The meticulous layering, combined with careful documentation, transforms the buried city into a three-dimensional archive, where every layer contributes to understanding the interplay of life, flood, and reconstruction over centuries. Collapsed ceilings, partially rebuilt walls, and streets layered atop older structures mark the neighbourhood's enduring struggle against recurring floods and natural decay. Archaeologists have observed that roofs were often used as foundations for new dwellings, allowing life to continue above damaged levels. Street layers accumulated organically, preserving a record of community adaptation over time. Even as destruction and rebuilding blurred individual ownership, the collective memory of the neighbourhood persisted in its architecture, allowing modern observers to trace centuries of human occupation, adaptation, and the constant presence of environmental uncertainty. From structural remains and recovered artifacts, researchers gain insight into communal living, craft specialization, and adaptive strategies that prefigure more advanced Neolithic settlements. The arrangement of hearths, shared storage spaces, and ritual niches demonstrates a social fabric interwoven with both daily survival and symbolic practice. Evidence of craft production, pottery shaping, pigment application, and tool making underscores a level of organisation that would later influence larger urban centres. Despite the ravages of floods and erosion, the preserved neighbourhoods retain an eloquent testimony to the ingenuity, cooperation, and cultural depth of Çatalhöyük's inhabitants. The buried neighbourhoods retain their mystery despite careful study, offering only fragments of homes and ritual spaces as testimony across millennia. Excavators have reconstructed streets, dwellings, and communal spaces, yet significant portions remain inaccessible or obscured beneath successive flood deposits. Each excavation uncovers both answers and new questions, as walls and artifacts hint at a complexity only partially visible. The city emerges as a puzzle, simultaneously familiar and unknowable, a testament to the persistence of human settlement even under the constant threat of natural forces. Within the stacked mud brick homes, traces of generations linger silently, suspended between destruction and preservation by the floods that once swept through the city. 16. Thonis-Heracleion stone harbours. Once a bustling nexus of trade and ritual, Thonis-Heracleion thrived at the mouth of the Nile, its stone harbours and temples bearing witness to a vanished civilization. Merchants from across the Mediterranean docked at its quays, while priests oversaw rituals within towering temples that lined the riverbanks. Ancient sources describe processions, ceremonies and commercial exchange that imbued the city with ceaseless activity. Today, archaeologists piece together the remnants of this vanished hub, where carved stone reliefs and collapsed monuments suggest grandeur and complexity. Floods and subsidence eventually claimed the city, but fragments of its architecture preserve the story of its prominence. Ancient texts describe the city as a critical gateway between Egypt and the Mediterranean, where merchants, pilgrims, and officials converged in ceaseless activity. Greek and Egyptian records mentioned Thonis-Heracleion as both a religious and commercial centre, emphasising its role in facilitating trade and maintaining diplomatic connections. Ships carrying luxury goods, grain, and raw materials would have lined its harbours, while priests and civic leaders coordinated ceremonies to honour the gods. These accounts, combined with modern archaeological evidence, illuminate a city whose economy, spirituality, and daily life were intertwined. The historical record frames the discovery of submerged ruins as a window into one of antiquity's vital port cities. Pillars, carved reliefs, and foundations of grand temples reveal architectural sophistication, preserved in part by the river's embrace yet obscured by centuries of sediment. Archaeologists have documented colonnades decorated with hieroglyphs and statues, hinting at rituals that once took place along these stone corridors. Temple walls, though partially toppled, retain traces of inscriptions and iconography linking them to deities such as Amun and Hapi. The layout suggests carefully planned ceremonial spaces aligned with both the Nile and ritual processions. Each excavation uncovers fragments of floors, stairways, and sanctuaries that illuminate both the grandeur and mystery of a city now mostly hidden beneath water. Expansive quays and mooring platforms illustrate the scale of maritime commerce, suggesting fleets of ships once loaded and unloaded along the city's edge. Large stone docks, some measuring tens of meters in length, indicate accommodation for substantial vessels. Ramps and anchor points reveal careful engineering designed to withstand fluctuating Nile levels. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of warehouses and storage areas, pointing to a bustling trade network connecting Thonis-Heracleion to Egypt's interior and the wider Mediterranean. The arrangement of these harbour facilities suggests deliberate urban planning, combining economic efficiency with ritual and civic requirements in a city that thrived on both commerce and ceremony. Colossal statues, some toppled or fragmented, retain traces of intricate carvings that reflect civic pride, spiritual authority, and artistic achievement. Figures of pharaohs and deities once lined temple entrances and harbour areas, symbolising both protection and divine oversight. Many statues, preserved in part by silt and sediment, still display finely detailed headdresses, inscriptions, and ritual poses. Their positioning hints at public spectacle and ceremonial display, guiding visitors and merchants through spaces of both practical and spiritual significance. Even partially submerged, these sculptures convey the city's wealth, artistry, and devotion, offering modern researchers tangible evidence of the intersection between religious life and commercial activity. Studies in geology and archaeology reveal a combined impact of rising water, Nile inundations, and slow subsidence that engulfed the city's streets and structures over time. Sediment cores reveal layers of mud, sand, and silt deposited gradually, while the coastline shifted due to tectonic activity and erosion. These processes submerged much of Thonis-Heracleion, preserving stone foundations yet destroying fragile wooden structures and organic material. The city's disappearance into the river mirrors a slow, inexorable transformation, rather than a single catastrophic event. Understanding these mechanisms helps archaeologists interpret the distribution of temples, docks, and monuments, reconstructing a city that balanced human ambition with the volatile dynamics of its environment. Timbers, anchors, and scattered cargo fragments testify to the city's role in long-distance trade and the perils of navigating these waters. Shipwrecks, some containing amphorae of oil or wine, reveal maritime routes and trade goods that flowed through the port. Anchors and rudimentary hull remains illustrate vessel construction adapted to the Nile's currents and tides. Even partially preserved, these findings provide a rare glimpse into seafaring practices, logistics, and the hazards faced by crews operating in a dynamic, flood-prone harbour. Each recovered artefact strengthens understanding of the economic vitality of Thonis-Heracleion and the sophisticated interplay between waterborne commerce, infrastructure, and urban life. Offerings, votive objects, and temple layouts hint at ceremonies that connected the river, commerce, and divine observance within the urban landscape. Excavations reveal small altars, figurines, and ritual deposits alongside docks and storage facilities, indicating that religious practice was inseparable from daily and economic activity. Priests may have conducted rites to bless incoming ships, ensure bountiful trade, or maintain the favour of deities associated with the Nile and the sea. The proximity of ritual artefacts to commercial areas underscores a society in which spirituality governed the practical and ceremonial, revealing a dimension of urban life preserved yet partially obscured beneath sediment. Diving surveys, sonar imaging, and sediment analysis allow researchers to piece together building layouts and the sequence of occupation despite challenging underwater conditions. Submerged streets and foundations emerge gradually as archaeologists document elevations, alignments, and architectural features. High-resolution sonar provides three-dimensional mapping, while careful dredging exposes walls, stairways, and relief fragments. Micro-artifacts embedded in silt help establish chronology and usage patterns. The combination of technology and painstaking fieldwork allows a city that vanished beneath water to reveal its structure and social organisation, highlighting the meticulous effort required to reconstruct environments both lost and partially preserved. Erosion, sedimentation, and submerged debris obscure much of the city, leaving archaeologists to interpret fragmentary remains and reconstruct the past carefully. Walls, statues, and harbour stones are scattered or tilted by centuries of shifting mud and current, requiring interpretation through both observation and comparative studies. Organic materials have mostly decayed, leaving stonework as the primary record of human activity. Researchers must differentiate between natural deposition and intentional construction, piecing together clues that suggest the scale of docks, the arrangement of temple precincts, and the placement of monuments. Each fragment adds to a partial story, yet the city retains an air of mystery that challenges interpretation. Relative to contemporary Egyptian ports, Thonis-Heracleion's underwater preservation offers a rare glimpse into how flood-prone coastal cities manage trade, ritual, and urban organisation. Comparison with Tanis and Naucratis shows differences in layout, monumental emphasis, and integration with waterways. While many port cities vanished entirely, the sediment-protected ruins of Thonis-Heracleion provide unparalleled insight into the combination of commerce, religion, and civic planning. Artifacts and structures together convey the complexity of an urban centre that balanced human ambition with environmental vulnerability, offering both answers and tantalising gaps about the life, rituals, and maritime activity that once defined the city. Even with meticulous excavation, large portions of temples, docks, and public spaces remain enigmatic, their full scale and function tantalisingly out of reach. While sonar and diving reveal outlines, much of the city remains inaccessible or hidden beneath centuries of silt. Some statues lie toppled beyond recognition, and wooden components of docks or ships have long since decayed. Researchers continue to reconstruct the city's streets, harbour arrangements, and temple precincts, yet gaps remain in understanding the full extent of its trade networks, ritual practices, and urban density. Each discovery deepens both knowledge and mystery, preserving the city's allure for future investigation. Stone harbours, toppled statues, and submerged temples endure as silent witnesses to a city lost to water, guarding secrets that continue to elude discovery. 17. Durrington Walls timber structures. Vast circular arrangements of post holes mark where prehistoric communities once erected towering timber structures, their purpose now partially lost to time and flood-altered soil. Excavations reveal patterns suggesting ceremonial or communal gatherings, with posts set in deliberate alignment to create spaces that could accommodate large groups. While much of the wood has long since decayed, soil discolorations and sediment layers preserve the imprint of these monumental constructions. Archaeologists piece together sequences of construction and repair, revealing repeated human activity that hints at both social cohesion and ritual significance. Every depression and soil mark tells a story of labour, intention, and prehistoric design. Measurements reveal an expanse of posts stretching across hundreds of metres, suggesting large-scale planning and coordination for gatherings that might have drawn entire villages. The sheer number and spacing of the post holes indicate ambitious construction, far exceeding typical domestic building practices. Archaeologists estimate that some enclosures required hundreds of timber uprights, each positioned with careful attention to geometry and sightlines. The scale of the site underscores the capacity for collective organisation in Neolithic communities and the cultural importance of these monumental spaces, which may have served as focal points for seasonal celebrations, rites of passage, or ritualised social gatherings that united dispersed settlements. Impressions of deep-set timbers hint at sophisticated engineering, including methods for stabilising massive posts in soft floodplain soils without modern tools. Post holes reveal evidence of tamped or packed soil, suggesting knowledge of weight distribution and load-bearing principles. Some timbers appear to have been replaced or reinforced over time, indicating maintenance of the structures across generations. Archaeologists speculate that builders may have used ropes, levers, and simple scaffolding techniques to position posts several metres high, demonstrating ingenuity and practical problem-solving. These engineering solutions illuminate the technical capabilities of prehistoric communities whose architectural skill is often underestimated due to the impermanence of wood. Spatial patterns imply ritual activity, with concentric circles, avenues, and open spaces possibly guiding movement during seasonal festivals or communal ceremonies. Alignments and symmetry suggest intentional choreography, where participants might have processed through enclosures in carefully prescribed paths. Central posts or open areas may have served as focal points for performance, sacrifice, or other ceremonial acts. The recurring geometric patterns hint at a symbolic understanding of space, echoing cosmological or societal hierarchies that shaped Neolithic experience. Despite the loss of superstructures, these imprints preserve a sense of ritual rhythm and human purpose embedded in the landscape. Sediment layers reveal periodic inundations, indicating that floods may have reshaped the landscape repeatedly while preserving impressions of wooden structures beneath. Waterlogged soils created anaerobic conditions that slowed decay, allowing post-hole shapes to persist long after timber disintegrated. Stratigraphy demonstrates cycles of sediment deposition consistent with seasonal river overflow, suggesting that flooding influenced both the construction schedule and spatial organisation of the enclosures. The interaction of water and human activity created a layered archive in the earth, where each episode of flooding added context to the preserved patterns, preserving hints of a ceremonial landscape altered and partially erased by natural forces. Although the wood itself has long since rotted, discolorations in the soil outline post dimensions, angles, and placement, allowing archaeologists to reconstruct vanished forms. Detailed mapping of post-hole diameters and spacing provides insight into the height and girth of timbers, suggesting monumental proportions that would have dominated the prehistoric skyline. Some alignments correspond to astronomical observations or seasonal markers, hinting at potential calendrical or symbolic significance. Through careful measurement, archaeologists can digitally reconstruct the site, offering visualizations of spaces that once hosted human gatherings and ceremonies, transforming invisible traces into a tangible sense of scale and intention. Pottery shards, flint tools, and hearth remnants suggest that ceremonial spaces coexisted with practical activities, reflecting a fusion of ritual and daily life. Pottery sherds found within post-hole rings may indicate offerings or feasting, while flint blades point to subsistence and craft work. The presence of hearths implies that temporary cooking or communal fires accompanied gatherings. Together, these artifacts reveal that Durrington Walls was not a static monument but a dynamic environment, where the sacred and mundane coexisted. and where timber structures facilitated both social interaction and spiritual practice across seasons and generations. Clusters of post holes form repeating geometric patterns, hinting at design principles and cultural significance encoded in the arrangement of timber circles. Concentric rings, radial alignments, and linked enclosures suggest careful spatial planning, perhaps reflecting social hierarchies, cosmological concepts, or ritual choreography. Archaeologists compare these patterns to other Neolithic timber sites, noting variations in scale, shape, and orientation that underscore the uniqueness of Durrington Walls. The spatial order implies intentionality rather than randomness, preserving a silent narrative of human decision-making, collective effort, and symbolic expression embedded in the prehistoric landscape. Reconstructing scaled models of posts and enclosures provides insight into labour requirements, coordination, and the technical skill necessary to erect monumental timber structures. Experimental archaeology demonstrates that teams of dozens could erect posts several metres tall using levers, ropes, and simple scaffolding, offering practical insights into workforce organisation. Such reconstructions also reveal the time and effort invested in maintaining enclosures over successive years, shedding light on community priorities, resource management, and social cohesion. By replicating construction methods, researchers gain a more tangible understanding of the challenges and ingenuity involved in creating ceremonial spaces that left no permanent above-ground footprint. Similar enclosures across Neolithic Britain show parallels in ceremonial design, yet Durrington Walls' scale and complexity remain unparalleled, offering a unique glimpse into prehistoric social organisation. Sites like Woodhenge and Mount Pleasant provide comparative context, demonstrating shared architectural motifs, ritual concepts, and landscape utilisation. Durrington Walls, however, stands out for its immense post numbers, complex geometric arrangements, and integration with surrounding floodplain topography. Comparative studies underscore how this site reflects broader Neolithic traditions, while also asserting local identity, revealing how prehistoric communities negotiated space, symbolism, and environmental conditions to construct monumental but ephemeral ceremonial landscapes. Excavation, photogrammetry, and careful soil analysis allow researchers to map the vanished timber landscape despite the absence of preserved wood or intact structures. Detailed surveys document post-hole diameters, depths, and alignments, while digital modelling reconstructs enclosures in 3 dimensions. Sediment composition helps distinguish natural features from human-made alterations, revealing nuanced construction sequences. The combination of field excavation and technological analysis enables archaeologists to understand the site holistically, interpreting traces of ritual, habitation, and labour in a landscape otherwise devoid of standing architecture and preserving the intangible presence of communities that once shaped the earth itself. Post-hole impressions, aligned avenues, and scattered artefacts create a fragmented yet compelling portrait of a ceremonial landscape shaped by human hands and tempered by natural forces. Repeated flooding, soil movement, and decay have erased much of the timber, yet what remains conveys the scale, rhythm, and societal function of these enclosures. Archaeologists reconstruct not only spatial patterns, but also human behaviour, imagining seasonal gatherings, feasts, and ceremonial activities that unfolded within the timber circles. Each mapped post hole becomes a silent witness, preserving traces of labour, intention, and communal life in a landscape otherwise swept away by centuries of environmental change. Even without the timbers themselves, the hidden patterns etched into the earth preserve the silent memory of gatherings and rituals long erased by flood and time. 18. Skara Brae's original coastal layout. On the northern shores of Orkney, remnants of a Neolithic village reveal lives once lived where land and sea met. Skara Brae, partially buried beneath sand and silt, preserves the faint outlines of stone homes that once sheltered families for generations. Archaeologists have been able to reconstruct much of the village layout, offering a window into domestic life more than 5 millennia ago. Despite the loss of superstructures and timber elements, the alignment of walls, passageways, and hearths conveys a sense of spatial organisation that hints at social, practical, and ritual priorities. Each excavation reveals layers of human activity, frozen in time by coastal sedimentation. Interconnected homes form a network of rooms and narrow corridors, reflecting careful planning for both domestic and communal activity. The passageways, often shared between adjacent dwellings, suggest that inhabitants valued proximity and cooperation. Doorways were carefully positioned to provide privacy, yet maintain accessibility, and low stone walls delineated spaces for sleeping, storage, and communal interaction. The arrangement of homes in clusters indicates a degree of urban planning unusual for a Neolithic coastal settlement, implying that these early residents were highly attentive to both functionality and social cohesion. Early builders shaped local slabs into fitted walls and durable hearths, crafting structures that endured harsh weather and shifting sands. Stones were quarried from nearby outcrops, shaped and stacked without mortar, their careful arrangement preventing collapse during storms or high winds. Hearths were constructed within the walls, with surrounding stones forming seating and work areas, suggesting an intimate knowledge of construction, thermal efficiency, and household management. Such durable methods ensured that even after centuries of exposure, the footprint of human habitation remained legible to those who later sought to uncover its secrets. Compact sleeping areas and built-in storage demonstrate meticulous attention to daily needs and household organization. Stone platforms, often shaped to fit the human body, functioned as beds, while recessed compartments stored food, tools, and personal possessions. The hearth at the center of rooms provided warmth, light, and a focal point for family activity. These interior features reveal that Neolithic life was carefully orchestrated around domestic routines, combining comfort, practicality, and social function. The design of these spaces reflects a culture capable of sophisticated adaptation to environmental and societal pressures. Seasonal storms and moving sands repeatedly tested the village's resilience, gradually altering the landscape and concealing parts of the settlement. Evidence of sand deposition atop walls and between rooms indicates the slow, relentless encroachment of natural forces. Flooding, high tides, and wind-driven sediment shaped both the preservation and eventual partial burial of the village. These processes not only concealed homes from view but also created the conditions that would allow the structures to survive for millennia. Each layer of sand tells a story of environmental challenge and human adaptation, providing context for the artifacts and architecture unearthed. Pottery shards, tools, and personal ornaments provide insight into diet, craftsmanship, and rituals practiced within the homes. Clay pots and bowls, some decorated, suggest cooking and storage practices, while flint tools reveal subsistence strategies including hunting, fishing, and food preparation. Simple ornaments, beads, and personal items indicate aesthetic or symbolic expression within the domestic sphere. Together, these artifacts offer a window into daily life, highlighting how Neolithic inhabitants managed resources, expressed identity, and negotiated their environment in a place constantly buffeted by coastal change. Carved motifs and remnants of pigment indicate symbolic expression, showing that interiors were adorned with simple designs of potential social or ritual importance. Analysis of these pigments and carvings shows intentional placement near hearths or sleeping platforms, implying that aesthetics or symbolic markings were integrated into everyday domestic life. Some patterns resemble spirals, lines, or abstract shapes, echoing motifs found in other Neolithic sites across the British Isles. These subtle artistic touches hint at cognitive complexity and cultural continuity, offering glimpses into the beliefs, identity, and social communication of the residents beyond mere survival. Even in such small, practical dwellings, human creativity and symbolic thought left enduring traces in the stone. The arrangement of rooms suggests close-knit households or extended family units, revealing cooperation and shared responsibilities within the community. Spatial patterns indicate that multiple generations may have lived under one roof, with common areas for cooking, sleeping, and tool storage. Shared passageways and communal spaces hint at the integration of private and social life, balancing family autonomy with collective cohesion. Archaeologists infer that such layouts facilitated cooperation, allowing residents to respond collectively to environmental pressures while maintaining daily routines, rituals, and household management. Windblown sediment preserved the outlines of buildings, allowing archaeologists to reconstruct spaces that would otherwise have vanished entirely. Unlike timber or mud structures, stone constructions endured the centuries, while sand deposition protected fragile features from erosion. The resulting stratigraphy provides a chronological record, showing how successive layers of sediment gradually covered floors, walls, and hearths. Through careful excavation and mapping, researchers have traced both the physical layout and the sequence of occupation, revealing the ways in which human settlements interacted with the dynamic coastal environment over time. Unlike inland settlements, Skara Brae exhibits coastal adaptations, highlighting strategies for coping with rising sea levels and exposure to harsh weather. Homes were oriented and built to maximize protection from prevailing winds and water intrusion, and elevated hearths allowed heat to circulate efficiently. The village's positioning relative to dunes, cliffs, and tidal zones suggests deliberate site selection that balanced access to resources with environmental risk. Comparison to inland Neolithic sites underscores how coastal communities uniquely shaped their dwellings, revealing an intimate understanding of the challenges posed by life on a shifting shoreline. Mapping and meticulous excavation brought to light passageways, hearths, and storage areas, showing the village's original structure. Archaeologists employ stratigraphic analysis, photogrammetry, and 3D modelling to reconstruct the settlement digitally, bringing to life a landscape otherwise hidden under sand. Detailed measurements of walls, floors, and built-in features allow researchers to visualize human activity, domestic routines, and spatial organization. This combination of careful fieldwork and technological innovation transforms a partially buried site into a coherent narrative of human occupation and resilience against environmental pressures. Combined evidence from artifacts and structures suggests seasonal occupation, household routines, and social interaction within this small community. The presence of food storage, domestic tools, and hearths indicates that the village supported a subsistence strategy aligned with hunting, fishing, and seasonal gathering. Communal spaces reveal that residents interacted regularly, likely participating in shared labour, social activities, and ceremonial practices. These insights illustrate the rhythms of prehistoric life, capturing moments of daily work, family interaction, and social cohesion preserved beneath layers of sediment and sand. Rooms, corridors, and hearths form a partial portrait of a settlement shaped by both human ingenuity and environmental forces. Each uncovered feature hints at the rhythms of life once conducted within the village, from cooking and sleeping to communal tasks and social interactions. Yet, much remains hidden beneath shifting sands and eroded terrain, leaving researchers to imagine the full scope of domestic, social, and environmental interplay. The combination of tangible remains and missing elements imbues the site with mystery, emphasizing both the fragility and resilience of human settlement in a challenging coastal landscape. Skara Brae's weathered stone forms endure as silent witnesses to a vanished community, their secrets preserved beneath ever-shifting sands. 19. Abydos early dynastic enclosures. Early dynastic priests and rulers orchestrated ceremonies within massive enclosures, leaving behind traces of practices that shaped both belief and power. These structures, partially concealed by layers of Nile sediment, reflect the deliberate effort of early Egyptian society to monumentalize ritual activity. Archaeologists have uncovered walls, platforms, and altars that suggest highly organized ceremonial spaces, designed to impress and direct participants. Evidence of repeated construction, offerings, and processional pathways demonstrates that these enclosures were not static but evolved to accommodate growing social complexity and dynastic authority. Every stone and mud brick bears witness to rituals that blended devotion with political strategy. Structured gatherings, offerings, and processions reinforced social hierarchies, linking sacred rituals directly to emerging dynastic governance. The enclosures allowed elites to assert spiritual authority, demonstrating their divine mandate to the populace. Archaeological evidence suggests that large numbers of people could participate in or witness ceremonies, emphasizing communal engagement as a tool of both spiritual and social cohesion. Artifacts placed within specific zones indicate a careful choreography of ritual activity, hinting at codified practices and an early understanding of ceremonial performance as a means of consolidating power. To guide movement, delineate sacred zones, and highlight altars and ceremonial spaces, mud brick walls and stone platforms were arranged with precision. Builders used locally available clay and stone, shaping them into walls of varying height and thickness that could accommodate processions and ritual gatherings. The alignment of walls suggests intentional sequencing, possibly to create a symbolic journey through the sacred precinct. Some platforms appear elevated, drawing attention to specific areas and objects, while thresholds and open courtyards dictated both the flow of participants and the timing of ritual events. Libation channels, offering pits, and sculpted altars testify to rituals combining symbolic devotion, feasting, and the projection of political authority. Animal bones, ceramic vessels, and traces of foodstuffs reveal practices of sacrifice and communal consumption. Tiny carvings and painted pigments hint at visual symbolism intended to reinforce religious narratives. The distribution of these ceremonial objects within enclosures provides insight into how rituals were spatially organized, revealing both the practical and symbolic strategies employed by early priests and rulers. Successive layers of Nile silt captured each phase of construction and use, creating a chronological record of ceremonial life over centuries. Floodwaters deposited fine sediment that gradually concealed walls and platforms, effectively preserving them from erosion and human interference. Archaeologists can trace the sequence of events through stratigraphy, identifying which structures were built first, modified later, or replaced over time. These deposits also preserve organic materials, offering rare insight into perishable elements of ritual activity, such as plant offerings or wooden implements, which otherwise might have been lost to history. A window into the structured rituals and symbolic expressions that shaped communal life is provided by unearthed pottery, figurines, and animal remains. The ceramics vary in size and decoration, suggesting different ceremonial purposes and hierarchical access. Figurines, some depicting animals and others stylized human forms, may have served as votive objects or instructional symbols for participants. Animal remains indicate controlled slaughter and deposition, reflecting ritualized offerings intended to honor deities or commemorate dynastic events. Together, these artifacts allow a glimpse into the interplay between material culture, belief, and ceremonial practice in early dynastic Egypt. Inscriptions and early hieroglyphic markings on walls and artifacts hint at a developing system of communication, blending ceremonial record-keeping with symbolic storytelling. Analysis of these markings reveals sequences of ritual events, references to deities, and indications of offerings, showing that the enclosures were not only physical spaces but also mediums of written expression. Some inscriptions appear alongside altars or offering pits, suggesting they guided ritual practice or memorialized significant ceremonies. These early written traces provide insight into how the community documented sacred activities and conveyed meaning across generations, revealing a layer of intellectual and spiritual sophistication that complements the architectural and material record. Appearing deliberately arranged, the walls, platforms, and causeways might embody cosmological principles and guide the sequencing of sacred rituals. Certain alignments correspond with cardinal directions or celestial events, suggesting an awareness of astronomy in planning ritual spaces. Processional pathways lead from one sacred feature to another, guiding participants in a deliberate sequence that may have mirrored mythological narratives or reinforced social hierarchy. This spatial choreography indicates that the enclosures were not merely functional but encoded with meaning, blending practical construction with symbolic expression. Adjacent elite tombs demonstrate the interplay between mortuary practices and ceremonial enclosures, reinforcing dynastic authority through ritual architecture. The proximity of burial sites to sacred precincts indicates that the living and dead occupied intertwined sacred spaces, linking temporal power with ancestral reverence. Funerary goods, inscribed stelae, and traces of offerings illustrate how the enclosures served as a nexus for both devotion and political messaging. These connections reveal a deliberate strategy to integrate ritual, commemoration, and governance into a cohesive ceremonial landscape. Stratigraphy, geophysical surveys, and careful artifact documentation allow researchers to reconstruct layout, function, and ceremonial sequences. Modern techniques, including ground-penetrating radar and 3D mapping, have revealed walls and platforms still hidden beneath silt, uncovering a complex network of sacred spaces. Excavation of these layers provides not only architectural understanding, but also insight into the human activity embedded within them, from the placement of offerings to the movement of participants during ceremonies. The combination of tangible remains and analytical interpretation helps recreate the rhythm of ritual life at Abydos. Abydos enclosures stand out among contemporaneous sites for combining ritual performance, elite identity, and long-term labour investment. Unlike other early dynastic centres, the scale and organisation of these precincts reflect deliberate integration of spiritual, political, and social objectives. The careful placement of ceremonial features alongside tombs underscores the connection between religious practice and authority, while repeated modification over time highlights the enduring importance of these sites in consolidating early state power. Abydos thus provides a window into how ancient Egyptians structured sacred space to reinforce cultural continuity and hierarchy. Repeated building, deposition, and maintenance reflect communal coordination, long-term planning, and devotion to ritual order. Evidence of labour investment and artefact placement demonstrates that these enclosures were not temporary constructs but centres of enduring ceremonial significance. Participatory activities, ranging from offerings to processions, suggest that ordinary individuals contributed to sustaining elite authority while engaging in spiritual practice. Over generations, these repeated actions shaped both the physical enclosures and the cultural memory associated with them, leaving traces that archaeologists can interpret millennia later. Every recovered wall, platform, and pit hints at the rhythm of ancient ceremonies and the societal structures they reinforced. Though partially obscured by sediment, the spatial arrangement and associated artifacts convey a nuanced understanding of early dynastic ritual life, blending devotion, power, and human ingenuity. The preserved features invite speculation about ceremonies that cannot be fully witnessed today, while offering tangible evidence of the planning, labour, and symbolic intention invested in these sacred spaces. Abydos enclosures, set within the tranquil Nile floodplain, whisper of rituals and power obscured by the passage of centuries and layers of sediment. 20. Sambor Prei Kuk's pre-flood foundations. Ritual platforms emerge from the historical record as clues to ceremonies once central to early Khmer society. These pre-flood foundations, partially concealed by layers of sediment from shifting rivers, hint at a civilization that carefully integrated spiritual practice into the very layout of their settlements. Archaeological surveys reveal platforms, causeways, and small enclosures, each positioned to serve specific ceremonial purposes. The structures convey deliberate planning and a nuanced understanding of both space and sacred function. Despite centuries of flooding, the basic geometry of the temples remains discernible, allowing researchers to trace the architectural logic of a society long vanished. Builders employed innovative techniques, combining stone and mud brick in precise arrangements that defy simple explanation. Foundations were carefully levelled and reinforced, accommodating both human traffic and occasional inundation. Stones were quarried locally, shaped to fit the ritual platforms, and paired with sun-dried bricks to create durable elevated spaces. The meticulous layering suggests not only technical skill but also symbolic intent, as if each course of masonry marked a ritual progression or spiritual hierarchy. Excavation shows that these early builders anticipated environmental challenges, engineering structures that could endure while serving as ceremonial centres for generations. Altars and offering pits hint at practices that governed communal life and spiritual devotion across generations. Excavations have revealed depressions for libations, shallow receptacles for food offerings, and carefully arranged stones likely used in symbolic rites. The distribution of these features suggests a coordinated spatial choreography, where participants moved through sacred zones in prescribed sequences. Ritual activity may have combined elements of feasting, prayer, and ceremonial procession, reinforcing social cohesion and affirming the spiritual authority of temple elites. Every pit and platform adds a layer to the story of human engagement with both the divine and the environment. Flood cycles deposited protective layers over portions of the temples, simultaneously preserving and obscuring their design. Annual or seasonal inundations brought silt and sediment that covered lower platforms, hiding walls and causeways beneath a natural blanket. While this process rendered parts of the site invisible to casual observation, it also safeguarded foundations from erosion and human interference. Archaeologists can reconstruct these cycles through careful stratigraphic analysis, revealing how environmental forces shaped both the preservation of material culture and the trajectory of ceremonial practice. The floodplain itself becomes a silent partner in safeguarding ancient history. Near the temple foundations, evidence of early water management systems suggests that ancient builders anticipated seasonal floods and engineered drainage to protect sacred spaces. Archaeologists have uncovered channels, small retaining walls, and subtle embankments integrated into the temple complex, indicating a deliberate approach to controlling water flow. These features not only safeguarded platforms and courtyards, but also may have been used in ritual practices involving water, symbolically linking life, purification, and the divine. The presence of these systems demonstrates advanced engineering skills, careful observation of the local environment, and the dual role of flood management as both practical infrastructure and ceremonial design. This underscores how the temple complex harmonized human devotion with natural forces. Step platforms and enclosed courtyards suggest symbolic intent, possibly tied to early cosmological understanding. Elevated terraces may have represented sacred hierarchies, with higher platforms reserved for priests or elite participants during ritual events. Enclosures, walls, and causeways appear intentionally arranged to guide both movement and perception, creating a structured environment where the physical and spiritual realms intersect. Alignment and orientation of certain features may correspond to celestial or seasonal markers, reflecting an early Khmer awareness of cycles in nature and their integration into ritual space. Carved objects, pottery, and votive implements reveal complex ritual behaviors and the aesthetic sensibilities of temple builders. Small figurines, ceramic bowls, and fragments of stone sculptures provide evidence of offerings and symbolic acts. Their placement within platforms and enclosures indicates intentionality, suggesting that every object served a role in the enactment of sacred rites. These artifacts also offer insight into the material culture of the community, illustrating how craftsmanship and devotion were intertwined. Each discovery adds depth to the understanding of ceremonial life at Sambor Prei Kuk. Clustered enclosures and connecting causeways indicate careful planning, guiding movement and ritual flow with deliberate precision. The temples were not isolated structures, but part of a larger complex, with pathways linking platforms and courtyards. Spatial arrangement suggests a hierarchy of access, where participants moved through defined areas according to status or role within ritual sequences. The organization reflects both social and religious logic, revealing a society attentive to order, symbolism, and the orchestrated experience of sacred events. Archaeological mapping of these pathways provides a tangible sense of how space directed human behavior. Foundations anticipate architectural elements of Angkorian complexes, illustrating continuity of ceremonial design over centuries. Features such as terraced platforms, causeways, and courtyards foreshadow the larger, more elaborate temples that later characterized the Khmer Empire. While Sambor Prei Kuk predates the grandeur of Angkor, its architectural vocabulary demonstrates early experimentation with spatial hierarchy, symbolic form, and ritual staging. Studying these pre-flood foundations allows researchers to trace the evolution of temple architecture, revealing the continuity of sacred concepts and construction techniques across generations. Trenches dug during excavation, combined with sediment studies, have exposed subtle structural traces once unseen. Archaeologists employ stratigraphy, geophysical surveys, and detailed artifact mapping to reconstruct the layout of temples now partially submerged or eroded. Sediment cores indicate the depth and frequency of flooding, while remote sensing identifies buried walls and platforms without intrusive digging. Together, these methods reveal not only the physical form of the temples, but also the sequence of human activity, highlighting the interplay between environmental forces and ritual practice that shaped the site's history. Coordinated construction efforts reflect early societal organization, engineering skills, and adaptation to periodic flooding. The scale of labor, organization of materials, and planning required to erect platforms in a dynamic landscape suggests a structured and hierarchical community. Teams would have transported stone and clay, leveled foundations, and reinforced platforms against seasonal inundation. These efforts demonstrate both practical ingenuity and communal investment in sacred infrastructure, indicating that the temples functioned as more than spiritual centers. They were manifestations of social cohesion and human ambition. The deposition of artifacts and the layout of pathways suggest ceremonial practices with intricate sequences of offerings and movement. Participants may have followed prescribed routes, depositing objects, performing libations, or engaging in symbolic gestures at designated points. Spatial cues within the platforms likely guided behaviour, creating a ritual rhythm that intertwined human action with architectural design. By analysing these patterns, archaeologists reconstruct not only physical layouts, but also glimpses of social and religious life, revealing how human devotion was encoded into the very structure of these pre-flood foundations. Even in partial ruin, the pre-flood foundations embody a tangible connection to early Khmer ritual life and architectural ambition. Despite centuries of sediment coverage and river erosion, the platforms retain their spatial logic, revealing deliberate design and ceremonial purpose. Each uncovered wall, stairway and pit contributes to an understanding of how early societies navigated environmental challenges while expressing faith and social order. The foundations invite reflection on human ingenuity, adaptation, and the continuity of cultural practice across time, bridging the gap between past and present in the Cambodian floodplain. Sambor Prei Kuk's hidden platforms, buried beneath shifting river sediments, endure as silent witnesses to devotion, ingenuity, and water-shaped civilization. 21. Lake Titicaca's submerged stone platforms. Shallow waters conceal a labyrinth of stone platforms whose purpose and age have puzzled researchers for decades. Rising from the lakebed, these terraces hint at human ingenuity in a landscape now dominated by water. Sediment has partially obscured their form, leaving only fragments visible to divers and sonar surveys. Yet even these glimpses suggest deliberate construction, where each stone was carefully placed to serve both functional and ceremonial purposes. The platform's arrangement conveys a sense of order, while their partial concealment evokes an enduring mystery. Why build such extensive structures in a place now mostly submerged? Massive blocks of volcanic rock were fitted together with precision, forming terraces and raised areas that defy simple explanation. Unlike randomly piled stones, these platforms demonstrate thoughtful engineering, with weight distribution and interlocking arrangements that have allowed them to survive centuries underwater. Researchers have noted that some stones were deliberately shaped to fit adjoining pieces, creating stability in a dynamic aquatic environment. This careful construction hints at both a deep understanding of materials and a societal capacity for organised labour, suggesting that these platforms were not casual projects but central to the communities that built them. Evidence suggests these platforms served as stages for offerings, communal gatherings, or other spiritual practices tied to water and fertility. Excavations and underwater surveys have revealed alignments and depressions that may have accommodated ceremonial items or marked ritual events. The water connection appears deliberate. The proximity to the lake, orientation of the terraces, and traces of symbolic artifacts imply ceremonies designed to honour deities or natural cycles. In this way, the platforms function not only as physical structures, but also as a nexus for social cohesion and spiritual observance, where human and environmental forces intertwined. Rising lake levels over centuries slowly engulfed the structures, preserving some features while erasing others beneath layers of sediment. Climatic shifts and natural hydrological fluctuations contributed to the submersion, creating a partially hidden archaeological record. By studying sediment cores and shoreline changes, researchers have traced periods when the platforms were fully exposed and when water encroached gradually. The lake itself has become a silent conservator, shielding stonework and artifacts from erosion and human interference while simultaneously obscuring their original form and purpose, leaving modern investigators to reconstruct the past from fragments. Silt and detritus accumulated around the foundations, creating natural barriers that both protect and obscure the platforms from view. Fine particles have filled gaps between stones, stabilizing sections of the terraces while masking details of construction. This natural accumulation complicates excavation, but also preserves evidence of human activity, from footprint impressions to discarded ritual objects. Sediment analysis has revealed sequences of flooding and drought, providing insight into the environmental conditions the builders contended with. The interplay between water, sediment, and stone reflects an ongoing dialogue between human ingenuity and natural forces over centuries. Fragments of pottery, carved stones, and organic remnants recovered nearby hint at the daily and ceremonial lives of the builders. Ceramics with distinctive shapes and markings suggest communal meals or offerings, while carved stone fragments may have functioned as ritual symbols. Organic materials such as preserved reed fibers provide clues about construction techniques and the resources available to these early communities. Collectively, these artifacts offer a glimpse of a society that engaged with both the sacred and the practical, weaving ritual activity into daily life in ways that endure beneath the lake's surface. The placement of platform clusters appears deliberate, possibly reflecting cosmological beliefs or patterns of communal interaction. Some terraces align with nearby promontories or sunrises on specific dates, suggesting an awareness of celestial cycles. Pathways between terraces indicate planned movement during ceremonies, with participants likely following sequences dictated by ritual tradition. The spatial arrangement conveys both functional logic and symbolic resonance, demonstrating that these structures were designed with more than immediate practicality in mind. Each cluster of platforms tells a story of cultural intent encoded in stone and water. Under the lake's surface, pathways reveal an intentional design connecting platforms and guiding movement no longer visible above water. Archaeologists have identified linear alignments of stones that may have functioned as causeways or ceremonial walkways linking terraces. These connections indicate that the platforms were not isolated but part of a coordinated spatial system, possibly reflecting communal or ritual patterns. Observations suggest that the arrangement allowed participants to traverse between terraces safely during low water periods, while symbolic orientation may have guided ritual movement. The network of pathways reinforces the idea that the entire complex was designed with both practical and spiritual intent, integrating social cohesion, environmental awareness, and ceremonial structure. Certain construction techniques and ceremonial layouts foreshadow features seen in later pre-Incan and Tiwanaku-influenced sites. Raised terraces, precise stone fitting, and organized ceremonial zones anticipate elements present in monumental Andean architecture centuries later. While the platforms of Lake Titicaca predate these civilizations, they reveal continuity in approaches to integrating ritual space, environmental adaptation, and social organization. Studying the submerged platforms thus provides a broader understanding of cultural evolution in the highlands, offering insight into how early societies balanced spiritual and practical needs in challenging landscapes. Sonar mapping, diving surveys, and sediment coring have revealed submerged alignments and terraces invisible from the surface. These modern techniques allow archaeologists to reconstruct layouts without disturbing fragile environments, revealing patterns otherwise lost to the lake. Divers have documented stone arrangements, while sonar imaging has mapped terraces and depressions across wide areas. Combined with sediment cores that identify water level changes and past flooding events, these methods illuminate the complex interaction between human construction and the evolving lake environment, creating a picture of submerged heritage gradually brought into focus. The builder's ability to anticipate fluctuating water levels demonstrates early engineering foresight and an intimate understanding of the lake environment. Platforms were raised and leveled to remain functional despite seasonal or long-term water changes, and some stones may have served as markers or stabilizers against currents. This suggests that early communities closely observed environmental patterns and adapted construction to maintain ceremonial and practical utility. Their work reflects not only technical skill, but also a worldview that integrates human activity with the rhythms of water and land, revealing a sophisticated ecological awareness. Terrace orientation and artifact distribution suggest ceremonial practices involving offerings, orchestrated movement, and the participation of the community. Patterns indicate that rituals were spatially orchestrated, with specific terraces and pathways guiding participants through sequences of symbolic action. Items left behind, ceramic fragments, stone carvings, and organic residues, offer evidence of both individual and communal devotion. By combining spatial analysis with artifact study, archaeologists reconstruct the ceremonial life of these submerged sites, highlighting the ways human behavior, belief, and environment converged in a deliberately crafted sacred landscape. Bioarchaeological evidence from nearby lake sediments reveals the diet and resource use of communities that built and maintained the platforms. Analyses of organic remains, including fish bones, charred plant matter, and pollen, suggest a mixed subsistence strategy combining fishing, cultivation along the lake margins, and exploitation of wetland resources. The platforms may have served as central hubs for processing, storage, or ritualized feasting connected to these resources. Seasonal patterns of deposition indicate that the community timed construction and ceremonial activity in harmony with environmental cycles. This evidence underscores the intimate relationship between human activity and the lake ecosystem, demonstrating how the platforms were both practical and symbolic anchors in a dynamic landscape. Even beneath meters of water, the platforms convey a sense of deliberate design, ritual purpose, and human resilience against environmental change. Stone arrangements, terraces, and associated artifacts reveal that these structures were central to social and spiritual life, carefully engineered to endure fluctuating conditions. The platforms serve as tangible links to past communities, preserving evidence of ceremonial planning, construction expertise, and adaptive strategies. Their partial concealment beneath water adds an enduring mystery, challenging researchers to interpret a culture that shaped the land and was in turn shaped by it. The glassy waters of Lake Titicaca conceal stone platforms that silently testify to a civilization shaped by and now hidden beneath the lake.